What would you do if your family chose someone else over you? Madison had worked tirelessly to keep her family's home together, but when her sister Brittany and her husband Chad needed a place to stay, her mother's decision to take them in without consulting her felt like the final straw. Feeling neglected and betrayed, Madison's frustration boiled over. The fight with her mother escalated quickly, and Madison, feeling dismissed and unappreciated, decided it was time to leave. Stay tuned to see how Madison takes control of her own life. And don't forget to subscribe for more emotional stories. The living room felt cramped, the air thick with tension as I looked at my mother, Carol, and my younger sister Brittany. Brittany had just announced that she and her husband, Chad, needed a place to stay because they were going through a rough patch. My mother's face lit up with excitement, almost childlike, as if she'd just been handed the perfect gift. "Of course, you two can stay here," she said with a smile, wrapping Brittany in a big, warm hug. "We'll make room for you, no problem." My heart sank. This was my home, the small two-bedroom house I had worked so hard to keep together, and yet, as always, my needs seemed to fade into the background. I tried to keep my voice steady, but it wavered as I spoke. "Mom, can I talk to you for a few minutes?" Without even looking at me, Carol waved her hand dismissively. "Not now, Madison. We need to get the guest room ready for Brittany and Chad," she said, her attention fully on them. Brittany shot me a smug smile, clearly enjoying the spotlight. I felt a familiar surge of anger, my fists clenching as the frustration bubbled up inside me. "This isn't just your decision," I said, raising my voice just enough to make my point. "I live here too, and I don't agree with them moving in without even talking to me first." Carol's face hardened instantly as she turned toward me. "Watch your tone, young lady," she warned, her voice cold. "Brittany is family, and family comes first." "But what about me?" I asked, my voice cracking with hurt. "I've sacrificed so much to keep this place running, and yet you act like I'm just in the way." Carol's eyes narrowed, her steps deliberate as she moved closer, pointing a finger at me with cold accusation. "If you can't accept your sister's situation, then maybe you should find somewhere else to live." Her words felt like a slap to the face. I caught Brittany's smirk from the corner of my eye, clearly relishing the drama she'd caused. "Fine, Mom," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and pain. "Maybe I will." Without another word, I stormed out of the living room, tears already welling up in my eyes. I had finally hit my breaking point. I locked myself in my room, pacing back and forth, tears streaming down my cheeks. How could my mother be so heartless? After everything I'd done to keep this household afloat, she was choosing Brittany and Chad, two people who couldn't even hold down a job over me. Then came the knock on the door. "Madison, we need to talk about this." My mother's voice sounded irritated, cutting through my spiraling thoughts. I swung the door open with a glare. "Talk about what? About how you're replacing me with your favorite daughter?" Carol's face grew stern, her patience clearly worn thin. "Don't be so dramatic. Brittany and Chad are going through a tough time, and they need our help." "Our help?" I scoffed, crossing my arms in disbelief. "More like my help. I've been paying half the bills around here while Brittany just drifts through life, taking advantage of everyone." "Watch your mouth," Carol snapped, her voice sharp. "Brittany is going through a difficult time. The least you could do is show some compassion." I let out a bitter laugh. "Compassion? That's rich coming from you. When was the last time you showed me any compassion?" Mom's eyes narrowed and her face hardened. "You ungrateful brat. After everything I've done for you." "Everything you've done for me?" I shot back, my voice rising. "All you do is criticize me, put me down, and favor Brittany no matter what she does." "That's enough," Mom shouted, her face turning red with anger. "I won't have you talking to me like that in my own house." "Your house," I retorted. "I've been the one holding this place together with my paychecks while you bend over backward to please Brittany." Mom's face twisted in anger. "If you can't show your sister some basic kindness, then maybe it's time you found your own place." Her words hit me so hard, it felt like all the air had been knocked out of my lungs. "You're kicking me out?" I asked, barely able to breathe. "If that's what it takes for you to learn some respect," Mom said coldly. In that moment, something inside me snapped. "Fine," I said, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. "I'll leave, but don't come crawling back to me when Brittany and her deadbeat husband bleed you dry." Mom's eyes widened in surprise, but before she could respond, I slammed the door in her face. Hot tears ran down my cheeks as I realized I'd finally had enough. My cheeks were wet with tears as I sank to the floor, my world feeling like it was collapsing. After the explosive fight with Mom, I knew there was no turning back now. I had to move out, start fresh, and leave the toxic environment of my family behind. As much as it hurt, I couldn't keep subjecting myself to their cruelty and favoritism. I picked up my phone and called my best friend Ashley, trying my hardest to hold back more tears. "Hey, I need a huge favor," I began, my voice shaky. "Can I crash at your place for a little while?" "Wild horses!" Ashley's voice came through the line, full of concern. "Of course, Madison, what's going on?" "It's a long story," I said, taking a deep, trembling breath. "I'll explain everything when I get there. Is it okay if I come over tonight?" "Absolutely," Ashley replied without missing a beat. "My door is always open for you." With Ashley's comforting words echoing in my mind, I began the painful process of packing up my things, sorting through the remnants of my life in this house. The place I had worked so hard to keep together was like tearing apart the last bit of myself. All the sacrifices I had made to keep things running smoothly, all the birthdays and holidays where my efforts went unnoticed while Brittany soaked up all of Mom's attention, came rushing back. The weight of it all made my chest tighten. I fought back the tears that burned in my eyes, refusing to let them fall. I couldn't break down now. I had to stay strong, carve out a new life, one far from the suffocating family dynamics that had kept me trapped for so long. A sharp knock on my bedroom door made me jump. "Madison, it's Chad!" came the voice of Brittany's husband. I froze, my muscles tensed. I knew exactly what he wanted. He had always been smooth, manipulative. "What do you want?" I snapped, my voice cutting through the silence. "Can we talk?" Chad's tone was unnervingly calm and gentle. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." I couldn't hold back the scoff. Yanking the door open, I glared at him. "The only misunderstanding here is you two thinking you can just show up and take over my life." Chad raised his hands in a gesture of supposed innocence, his eyes wide with feigned understanding. "I get that this is tough, but we really need your help right now. Brittany and I are going through some rough times." "Rough times you brought on yourselves," I shot back, the anger flaring up in me. "Don't try to guilt me into enabling your irresponsibility." Chad's face hardened, but he tried to keep his composure. "Watch your tone, Madison. We're family, and family supports each other." I laughed bitterly. "Yeah? Tell that to Mom and Brittany. They've made it pretty clear where I stand in this family." Before he could respond, I shoved past him, dragging my suitcase behind me. "I'm done with all of you. Don't even think about trying to reel me back in." Stepping out into the cool evening air, I felt a weight I hadn't realized was there lift off my shoulders. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was a small spark of hope. Hope for a future where I wouldn't be taken for granted, where I wouldn't constantly be belittled. When I arrived at Ashley's apartment, she was waiting for me. She opened the door with a warm hug, taking my suitcase from my hands and guiding me inside without a word. "I'm so sorry you're going through this, Madison," she said, her voice thick with empathy. I swallowed hard, a lump forming in my throat. I offered her a weak smile. "Thank you for letting me stay. I couldn't be around them anymore." Ashley led me to her cozy living room, the soft light and calm atmosphere feeling like a safe haven compared to the tension that still clung to me from my family home. "Make yourself at home," she said, gesturing to the plush couch. "Can I get you something to drink? Maybe a glass of wine?" I shook my head, sinking into the couch as relief washed over me. "Just some water would be great, thanks." As Ashley disappeared into the kitchen, I closed my eyes and took a slow breath. The weight of the past few hours settled over me. I was officially on my own, free from the toxic cycle that had drained me for so long. Ashley returned with a glass of water in hand and a warm, reassuring smile. "Whenever you're ready, I'm here to listen. I nodded, taking a sip of the cool water before letting out a long breath. Finally, I began to tell her the whole tangled story. Mom's blatant favoritism, Brittany's entitled attitude, and that final explosive argument that led to my eviction. I said, letting it all pour out to Ashley. She listened with a furrowed brow, clearly upset on my behalf. I can't believe they treated you like that, Ashley said, her voice filled with anger. You've done nothing but support that family, and they just tossed you aside like it was nothing. I know, I replied, my voice thick with emotion. As painful as it is, I just can't keep putting myself through that kind of hurt. Ashley reached over, giving my hand a comforting squeeze. You're doing the right thing, Madison. It's time you started living for yourself. Her words resonated deeply, sparking a new determination within me. For so long, I had sacrificed my happiness and well-being for a family that didn't seem to appreciate me, but now that chapter was finally closed. Over the next few days, I settled into Ashley's cozy spare bedroom. As I unpacked my belongings, it felt like I was unearthing parts of myself I had buried under the weight of my family's expectations. Each item I put away seemed to free me a little more. I started to explore new interests, indulging in things I had always wanted to try but had never allowed myself. I joined a local book club, meeting people who shared my love of reading, and even signed up for a beginner's pottery class. Pursuing activities just for my own enjoyment felt like a breath of fresh air, like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. There was no one judging me, no one criticizing my choices. For the first time in years, I was free to simply enjoy myself. At work, I threw myself into my projects with renewed energy, confidently pushing my ideas forward and impressing my boss with my dedication. For the first time in ages, I felt pride and accomplishment that wasn't tied to pleasing anyone but myself. I was beginning to see my own worth, separate from the opinions of my family. As days turned into weeks, the weight of my past slowly lifted, replaced by a sense of freedom I hadn't known before. For once, I was living for me, and the future suddenly felt brighter than ever. Then, a few weeks after I had moved in with Ashley, my phone started ringing off the hook. Every time, it was either Mom or Brittany, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails begging me to pick up. I ignored them. I wasn't ready to reopen that chapter of my life. I had finally started to heal, and I didn't want to risk getting pulled back into the chaos. One evening, as Ashley and I were catching up over takeout, my phone rang again. I rolled my eyes, ready to silence it, but Ashley stopped me with a gentle yet firm look. You should probably answer it, she said, giving me an encouraging nod. Maybe they finally have something important to say. With a heavy sigh, I picked up. What do you want, Mom? Madison, thank goodness! Mom's frantic voice cut through the line, strained and panicked. We're in big trouble here. A strange, bittersweet satisfaction curled in my chest at hearing the desperation in her tone. Oh, really? What's the matter? Can't handle things without me around? It's not just that, Mom said, her voice tense. We're behind on the mortgage payments, and the utility companies are threatening to cut everything off. A dry, humorless laugh escaped me. Gee, I wonder how that happened. Maybe you shouldn't have kicked out the person who was actually helping with the bills. Madison, please, Mom pleaded, sounding desperate. We need your help. We're barely scraping by. A dark sense of satisfaction bloomed inside me. After years of being dismissed and underappreciated, it was almost gratifying to hear that the tables had finally turned. You know, Mom, this is exactly what I warned you about, I replied coldly. You chose Brittany over me, and now you're dealing with the consequences. I made a mistake. Okay? Mom's voice cracked, filled with emotion. I'm sorry for how I treated you. Just please help us out, just this one time. I could hear Brittany's muffled sobs in the background. A small part of me felt a twinge of sympathy, but the years of hurt ran too deep. I knew I couldn't allow myself to be pulled back in. No, I said firmly. This is where I draw the line. The line went silent for a moment. I could practically hear them scrambling for words, but I didn't care anymore. They had made their choices. Now, it was time for me to live for myself. Sorry, Mom. I said, my voice steely. You told me to leave, and that's exactly what I did. Now it's your turn to figure things out on your own. With that, I ended the call, ignoring the flood of texts and voicemails that followed. I was done with them and finally free. Ashley looked at me, her expression filled with both concern and understanding. Are you okay? She asked gently. I nodded, letting out a deep breath. Yeah, I'm fine, I said, a quiet strength in my voice. It's just satisfying to finally see them reaping the consequences for once. I said to Ashley, feeling a strange mix of liberation and lingering guilt. I'm standing up for myself. They made their bed, and now they have to lie in it. Ashley gave me a supportive smile. You have every right to stand ground, Madison. They need to face the consequences of their choices. As the weeks went by, Mom and Brittany's calls became increasingly frantic. I learned that Chad had been hiding serious debts which led to his job loss and worsened their financial situation. While a small part of me felt guilty for not stepping in to help, a stronger part of me understood that helping would only feed the dysfunction. Sometimes the only way to truly break free is to let the consequences play out, painful as that might be. Over the next few months, I heard about how things back in my old home were spiraling out of control. Ashley, who kept up with neighborhood gossip, filled me in on the details. The utilities had been shut off, debt collectors were constantly harassing them, and the yard that I had always kept neat was now overgrown and unkempt. A twisted sense of satisfaction flickered within me. After years of being treated like I was invisible in my own home, watching them experience the fallout felt like poetic justice. One evening, Ashley came home from work with a concerned expression. I saw your mom at the grocery store today, she said hesitantly, watching my reaction. She looked rough. I raised an eyebrow, unsure if I wanted to hear more. Oh, how so? Ashley sighed, shaking her head. Her clothes were disheveled, her hair was a mess. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. For a moment, a flicker of guilt tugged at me, but I quickly pushed it down. Well, maybe now she'll finally understand what it's like to struggle, I replied, trying to sound indifferent. Ashley gave me a sympathetic look. I know you're still hurting, Madison, but don't let their mistakes consume you. You've done so well moving forward, don't let them drag you back. I nodded, taking her words to heart. Though a small part of me couldn't help but savor their hardship, after years of neglect and mistreatment, it felt like the universe was finally setting things right. A few days later, my phone rang from an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I picked up. Hello? I answered cautiously. Madison, it's Brittany, a strained voice whispered on the other end. I could hear the exhaustion and fear in her tone. I felt a surge of bitterness rise within me. What do you want, Brittany? I need your help. She choked out, her voice breaking. Everything is falling apart, and I don't know what to do. I couldn't help but scoff. Funny, that's exactly how I felt when you and Mom kicked me out like I didn't matter. I know, Brittany sobbed, sounding desperate. I was so wrong, Madison. Please, you have to help us. We're desperate. A twisted part of me relished in her anguish. This was the moment I had imagined countless times, the one where they would finally feel what I had felt. Why should I help you, Brittany? I asked coldly. You and Mom made it clear that I wasn't part of the family anymore. Please, Madison, she begged, her voice trembling. I'll do anything. I'm sorry for how we treated you. Just please don't let us end up on the streets. I could hear the genuine desperation in her voice, and for a fleeting moment I almost felt sympathy for her, almost. You know what, Brittany? I said, my voice cold and unyielding. This is exactly what you deserve. Maybe now you'll finally know what it feels like to be left out in the cold. With that, I ended the call, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction wash over me. They had brought this on themselves, and I wasn't about to be their savior. As the weeks turned into months, I heard more about how things were deteriorating at my former home. Ashley would occasionally fill me in on the latest updates. Unpaid bills piling up, debt collectors showing up regularly, and even rumors of Brittany and Chad turning to shady activities just to make ends meet. A part of me felt a dark satisfaction in watching their lives unravel. After years of being treated like a second-class citizen in my own family, it felt like poetic justice to see my family face the consequences of their actions. But another part of me couldn't ignore a small ache of sorrow. As much as they had hurt me, they were still my family, and watching them spiral downward tugged at my heart. One evening, as Ashley and I were catching up over a glass of wine, she gently brought up the topic. "Madison, I know you're still hurting from everything that happened," she said softly. "But don't you think it might be time to let go of some of that anger?" I sighed, swirling the wine in my glass. "I don't know, Ashley, they put me through so much for so long. Part of me feels like they deserve every bit of it." Ashley reached across the table, giving my hand a comforting squeeze. "I get it. Believe me, I do. But holding on to that bitterness is only going to end up poisoning you in the end." Her words struck a chord. As satisfying as it had been to see my family crumble, I realized that harboring all that resentment might only keep me chained to the past. Was I really any better if I let the anger fester? The next day, while I was preparing for an important presentation at work, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from Mom. I hesitated, taking a moment before finally answering. "Hello," I said cautiously. "Madison." Mom's voice was barely a whisper, thick with emotion. "I don't even know where to start." I steeled myself, preparing for excuses or another round of manipulation, but instead, my mother's voice softened, punctuated by quiet sobs. "I'm so sorry, Madison," she said, her words trembling. "I was a terrible mother to you. You deserved so much better than what I gave you." I felt my resolve waver as she continued, genuinely taking responsibility for the pain she had caused me. "I know I can never undo what I did," she said, her voice full of remorse. "But please, let me try. I'll do anything to earn your forgiveness." In that moment, something inside me shifted. As much as I had relished seeing them struggle, I suddenly understood that holding on to this bitterness was only hurting me. I took a deep breath, my voice softer than I intended. "Mom, I can't pretend like everything is okay between us. You really hurt me." "I know," she replied, her voice breaking. "And I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you let me." Exhaling deeply, I felt a heavy weight lift as I began to let go of the resentment that had burdened me for so long. "Okay, Mom," I said finally. "Let's start over, one step at a time." It wouldn't be easy, but in that moment I realized that true healing would come through forgiveness not just for them, but for myself too. After that emotional conversation, I felt a spark of hope for rebuilding our relationship, even if it would take time. Over the next few months, Mom made genuine efforts to make amends. She invited me over for weekly dinners where she listened patiently as I opened up about the years of pain and neglect I had endured. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, and even though it was difficult, it felt healing to finally be heard. Brittany and Chad, on the other hand, kept their distance. The last I heard, they had moved into a small apartment and were slowly getting back on their feet. A part of me still felt resentment toward them, but I knew holding on to it would only hold me back. Meanwhile, I was thriving in my independence. At work, I took on a side project that allowed me to showcase my creativity and problem-solving skills. My boss was impressed with my dedication, and soon there were whispers of a promotion. In my personal life, I rediscovered hobbies and interests I had neglected for too long. I joined a local book club where I enjoyed lively discussions and explored new literary worlds. I even started a pottery class, finding peace and mindfulness in the simple act of shaping clay. Through it all, Ashley remained my unwavering support, cheering me on every step of the way. "I'm so proud of you, Madison," she told me one evening as we shared a bottle of wine on her balcony. "You've come such a long way." I smiled, feeling a warm glow from her words. "I couldn't have done it without you," I said gratefully. "You were there for me when my own family wasn't." As the months passed, I felt myself truly letting go of the past. The anger and resentment that once consumed me slowly faded, replaced by a newfound sense of self-worth and confidence. One evening, as I was getting ready to go out with some coworkers, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "I just wanted to let you know how proud I am of you, Madison. You've grown into such a strong, independent woman, and I'm honored to be a part of your life again." Tears stung my eyes as I read her message. But this time, they weren't tears of pain or bitterness, they were tears of gratitude and healing. I had finally broken free from the toxic cycle that had held me back for so long. No longer was I defined by the neglect and mistreatment of my past. I was now forging my own path, surrounded by people who truly appreciated and supported me. As I stepped out into the warm evening air, a profound sense of peace washed over me. The journey had been long and difficult, but I had emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever. I was finally living for myself. What do you do when the family you've always tried to support turns their back on you in your time of need? When your own parents choose a vacation over your recovery, and your sister who hasn't contributed a penny to the family in over a year gets the trip you've planned and paid for? Lily worked tirelessly to support her family, to make sure they had everything they needed. She sacrificed her own dreams and paid their bills, even when her sister Rose refused to get a job, and her parents seemed to take her generosity for granted. But when Lily was injured in a car accident, she thought her family would rally around her. Instead, they took the trip she had planned for them, leaving her alone in the hospital to fend for herself. So, Lily made a choice. She would stop enabling their selfishness. She canceled everything: the trip, the tours, the flights. What they had done to her was unforgivable, and for the first time, she decided to prioritize herself. When they desperately reached out from their failed trip, Lily didn't feel the need to answer. She had nothing left to give. What would you have done in Lily's shoes? Would you have kept giving, or would you have finally chosen yourself? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you found this story powerful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories that make you think.
How could you, Carson? Just days from our anniversary? I glanced at the crumpled love letter in my hand, bile rising in my throat. The words blurred as tears stung my eyes. Carson's face paled. Margot, please let me explain. Explain what? I spat. That you've been having an affair behind my back? With whom? My mind raced, trying to make sense of the betrayal. He sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. It was a moment of weakness, a mistake. It didn't mean anything. Didn't mean anything? I echoed, my voice trembling with rage. Then what is this? I waved the damning letter in his face. Carson flinched, his eyes downcast. I'm sorry, Margot, truly, but we can't tell my mother. Not now. You know how fragile her health is. His mother, Faye, the woman who had embraced me as her own daughter when Carson and I married 5 years ago. A pang of guilt twisted in my gut, but it was quickly overshadowed by the bitter taste of betrayal. So, you expect me to just pretend everything is fine? I asked, incredulous. To lie to her, to everyone, while you carry on with your affair? Carson stepped closer, his hands outstretched in a placating gesture. It's over, I swear. It was a foolish mistake that won't happen again. But if we tell her now, so close to our anniversary, it could devastate her. Please, Margot, for her sake, let's keep this between us for now. I searched his eyes, desperate for any glimmer of truth, any sign that the man I loved was still in there. But all I saw was a stranger, a coward willing to sacrifice my trust for his own selfish reasons. Clenching my jaw, I nodded curtly. Fine, we'll keep up appearances for now, but mark my words, Carson, this isn't over. You've shattered my trust, and I won't forget that. Relief washed over his features, but I felt no satisfaction, only a hollow ache in my chest. As he reached out to embrace me, I recoiled, my body rigid with resentment. In that moment, a seed of determination took root within me. I would play along, bide my time, and when the opportunity presented itself, I would unleash the full force of my fury. Carson's betrayal would not go unanswered, and he would soon learn the true cost of his deceit. With a steely resolve, I turned away, already plotting my revenge. The anniversary celebration would be a mere charade, a calm before the storm I intended to unleash upon our fractured family. Margot, I don't trust her taking care of you, Carson murmured as he caressed my swollen belly. But there's no one else. I swallowed hard, my voice trembling. I'll be fine, Carson. It's just for a few days while you're away on business. His brow furrowed with concern, but he nodded reluctantly. All right, but promise me you'll call if she gives you any trouble. As if on cue, the doorbell rang, and Faye's familiar silhouette appeared through the frosted glass. I plastered on a smile, determined not to let her see my apprehension. Margot, darling! Faye enveloped me in a suffocating embrace, her saccharine tone already grating on my nerves. How are my beautiful grandchildren treating you? We're doing well, Faye, I replied, extricating myself from her grip. Thank you for offering to help while Carson is away. Her eyes narrowed ever so slightly, but the smile remained fixed in place. Of course, dear. What are mothers-in-law for? Carson cleared his throat, shooting me a pointed look before turning to his mother. I'll be back in a few days. Take good care of her, Mom. Don't you worry about a thing, Faye cooed, patting his arm reassuringly. Margot and the babies will be in excellent hands. As Carson departed, I couldn't shake the sense of dread that settled in the pit of my stomach. Faye's kindly demeanor was already beginning to fray, revealing glimpses of the true nature I had witnessed during her tirades against me. The first few hours passed without incident, but as the day wore on, Faye's criticisms grew more frequent and cutting. Margot, dear, are you sure you should be eating that? She clucked disapprovingly as I reached for a snack. You wouldn't want to put on too much weight, would you? I bit my tongue, reminding myself that confrontation would only escalate the situation. Later, as I attempted to tidy up the living room, Faye squeaked loudly. Honestly, Margot, is this how you keep house? No wonder Carson is always so stressed. The barbs continued, each one chipping away at my resolve. By evening, I was utterly exhausted, both physically and emotionally. The next morning, Faye's true colors emerged in full force. Up and at 'em, Margot, she trilled, throwing open the curtains to let in the harsh morning light. There's so much to be done around here. Before I could protest, she thrust a list of chores into my hands, a veritable marathon of tasks that would have been daunting for someone without the added strain of a twin pregnancy. But Faye, I'm not sure I should be doing all of this, I ventured cautiously. The doctor said I need to take it easy. Her eyes flashed with barely concealed contempt. Nonsense. A little hard work never hurt anyone. Now get moving, or do you want my grandchildren to grow up in a pigsty? Cowed by her forceful tone, I reluctantly began tackling the list, my back and feet aching with every task. Faye hovered nearby, offering a steady stream of criticism and barbed comments that left me feeling utterly demoralized. By the time Carson returned home, I was a physical and emotional wreck, my body racked with pain and my spirit crushed by Faye's relentless onslaught. As he took in my haggard appearance, concern etched deep lines across his brow. Margot, what happened? Are you all right? Before I could respond, Faye swooped in, her saccharine mask firmly in place. She's just been overdoing it, that's all. You know how nesting can be for expectant mothers. I opened my mouth to protest, to reveal the truth about her abusive behavior, but one withering glance from Faye silenced me. In that moment, I realized that confronting her directly would only lead to further anguish. No, I would bide my time, gather my strength, and when the opportunity presented itself, I would unleash the full force of my fury upon Faye and Carson both. Their betrayals would not go unanswered, and they would soon learn the true cost of underestimating my resilience. You're just like your mother, worthless, Faye hissed, her words cutting through the silence like a knife. I don't take orders from a failure. My heart sank as her cruel words echoed in the empty house. Memories of my late mother's gentle smile and unwavering love flooded my mind, a stark contrast to the venom spewing from Faye's lips. How dare you speak about her like that? I managed, my voice trembling with a mixture of grief and rage. Faye's lips curled into a contemptuous sneer. What? You think you're better than me? Than this family? You're nothing but a leech, leeching off my son's success. I recoiled as if struck, her words cutting deeper than any physical blow. Was this truly how she saw me, after all these years of trying to be the perfect daughter-in-law? I've given everything to this family, I protested, my hands instinctively cradling my swollen belly. These are Carson's children I'm carrying. Faye's gaze dropped to my midsection, her expression twisting into one of disdain. Don't flatter yourself. Once those brats are born, you're out of the picture, I'll make sure of it. A chill ran down my spine as the full weight of her threat sank in. She meant to take my children from me, to sever the bond between a mother and her newborns. The thought was utterly unthinkable. Yet I knew in that moment that Faye was capable of any cruelty imaginable. You're a monster, I whispered, hot tears stinging my eyes. Faye's laughter was cold, devoid of any warmth or humor. I'm a realist, dear, and the reality is you're not fit to be a mother, not to my grandchildren. In that instant, Something shifted within me. The fear and grief that had paralyzed me moments before gave way to a burning determination. I would not allow this bitter, twisted woman to dictate the course of my life or my family's future. Squaring my shoulders, I met Faye's icy glare with a steely resolve of my own. "You're wrong, Faye. I am a mother, and I will fight with every breath in my body to protect my children from your poisonous influence." Her eyes narrowed dangerously, but I held my ground, emboldened by the knowledge that I was fighting for something far greater than myself. "We'll see about that," she spat, turning on her heel and storming from the room. As her footsteps faded, I sank onto the couch, my hands trembling as I fumbled for my phone. With shaking fingers, I typed out a message to Carson, pleading for his help, his intervention. But even as I hit send, a part of me knew that this battle could not be won through his involvement alone. Faye's hatred ran too deep, her grip on our family too tight. No, if I wanted to truly free myself and my children from her toxic grasp, I would need to take matters into my own hands. And as I felt the tiny flutters of life within me, I knew that I would stop at nothing to ensure their safety and happiness. The war had begun, and I would emerge victorious, no matter the cost. "You think you're special because you're carrying his babies? Once they're born, you're out." Faye's words cut deeper than any knife, slicing through the fragile peace I had managed to maintain. I clutched my swollen belly protectively, as if shielding my unborn children from the venom dripping from her tongue. "What are you saying, Faye?" Her lips twisted into a cruel smirk. "Exactly what you think, dear. Once those brats are out of you, I'll make sure they stay right where they belong, with their real family." A chill ran down my spine as the full weight of her threat sank in. She meant to take my children from me, to sever the sacred bond between mother and child before it could even form. "You're insane," I breathed, my voice trembling with a potent mixture of fear and rage. "They're my babies, Faye. You can't just take them away." Faye's laughter was cold, devoid of any warmth or humor. "Watch me. You're nothing but an incubator, Margot, a means to an end. Once you've served your purpose, you'll be discarded like the worthless trash you are." Bile rose in my throat as I fought the urge to lash out, to claw and scratch until this vile woman understood the depth of my fury. But I knew such actions would only give her more ammunition, more justification for her twisted schemes. Instead, I forced myself to remain calm, to meet her icy glare with a steely resolve of my own. "I won't let you do this, Faye. These are my children, and I will fight with every breath in my body to protect them from your poisonous influence." Her eyes narrowed dangerously, but I held my ground, emboldened by the knowledge that I was fighting for something far greater than myself. "We'll see about that," she spat, turning on her heel and storming from the room. As her footsteps faded, I sank onto the couch, my hands trembling as I fought back tears of rage and despair. How could I have been so blind, so naive to the true depths of Faye's depravity? But even as doubt crept in, a newfound determination took root within me. I would not allow this bitter, twisted woman to dictate the course of my life or my family's future. Not anymore. With shaking fingers, I reached for my phone, opening the camera app and beginning to document the evidence of Faye's abuse. The cutting remarks, the emotional manipulation, the thinly veiled threats. Every cruel word, every caustic glance captured and preserved for the day when I would finally strike back. As the days passed, the collection grew, a damning testament to the true nature of the woman I had once foolishly called family. And with each new entry, my resolve hardened, my desire for retribution burning brighter than ever before. I would not be cowed, not be silenced or pushed aside like some inconvenient obstacle. I was a mother, a force of nature, and I would stop at nothing to ensure the safety and happiness of my children. The war had begun, and I would emerge victorious no matter the cost. "Faye, step back. I've heard everything." Carson's voice roared as he burst through the door, his eyes blazing with fury. "You have no right to threaten my wife." Faye's menacing glare faltered as Carson wrapped a protective arm around my shoulders, pulling me close to his chest. I clutched the damning evidence against Faye, bracing myself for the inevitable confrontation. "I should have known better than to trust a manipulative snake like you," Carson spat, his words dripping with venom as he glared at his mother. Faye's jaw clenched, her eyes narrowing into slits of rage. How dare you speak to me that way after everything I've sacrificed for this family? As Faye's vicious tongue unleashed on Carson, I couldn't help but feel a surge of anger towards her for the emotional torment she had inflicted on me. Her cruel taunts and empty threats had left me questioning my self-worth as a woman, as a mother. Just as I was about to unleash my bottled-up rage, the doorbell rang, breaking the tension. As I opened the door, my heart sank as I saw the sympathetic gaze of our dear friend, who had been a shoulder to lean on during my darkest moments. "Faye, you have no right to make threats against my wife," she said, her voice laced with anger. "She is carrying my grandchildren, and I will not have you terrorize her any longer." Faye's menacing glare softened as she realized the gravity of her actions and the consequences it could bring. As she begrudgingly let go of her bitterness, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief, knowing that her toxic influence would no longer affect our family. However, as Faye's demeanor changed, so did her perception of me. She realized that I was not the weak, helpless woman she had initially thought, but rather a strong, resilient individual who could stand up to her manipulative ways. As Faye begrudgingly accepted my strength, I felt a sense of empowerment, knowing that I had the ability to confront her and break free from her emotional hold. In that moment, I realized that Faye's actions were a reflection of her own insecurities and fears, rather than a personal attack against me. Her cruel words and empty threats were a desperate attempt to maintain control and assert her dominance. As I confronted Faye's fears, I felt a sense of pity for her, rather than anger. Her actions were a cry for attention and validation, which she sought through emotional manipulation. Ultimately, Faye's threats were a test of my resilience and strength of character. By standing firm in the face of her intimidation tactics, I proved that I was not easily swayed by her empty promises or hollow threats. In the end, Faye's actions only served to strengthen my resolve and determination to be a better person, a better mother, and a better daughter-in-law. This affair ends now, Carson. My voice rang out, clear and unwavering, as I threw the crumpled love letters onto the dining table before the astonished faces of our family. "You won't control me anymore." Carson's eyes widened in shock, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Beside him, Faye's expression contorted into a mask of rage, her hands clenching into tight fists. "How dare you bring this filth into my home?" she hissed, her gaze boring into me with a hatred I had never seen before. I met her glare with a steely resolve, emboldened by the knowledge that the truth was finally out in the open. "Your home? This is my home too, Faye. Or have you forgotten that I'm Carson's wife?" Harold, Faye's husband, shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes darting between the damning letters and his wife's furious countenance. "Faye, what is the meaning of this?" Before she could respond, Carson's sister, Allison, spoke up, her voice laced with disgust. "It means my dear brother has been unfaithful, father, to Margot, to this family." A heavy silence descended upon the room, thick with tension and unspoken accusations. I could feel the weight of their judgmental stares, but I refused to shrink away, to cower in the face of their scrutiny. "Well," I challenged, my gaze sweeping over the assembled family members, "does anyone else have anything to say?" Faye's lips curled into a sneer. "You're making a fool of yourself, Margot. Carson would never betray me like this." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Betray you? Is that what you think this is about, Faye? Open your eyes. Your son has been carrying on an affair behind my back, and you've been too blinded by your own twisted desires to see it." Carson flinched as if struck, his face flushing with shame. "Margot, please, let me explain." But I had no interest in his excuses, his feeble attempts at justification. "Explain what, Carson? How you lied to me, day after day, while you were off gallivanting with your mistress. Or maybe you'd like to explain why you allowed your vile mother to abuse and torment me, all in the name of keeping up appearances." Faye's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Watch your tone, girl. You have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't I?" I shot back, my voice rising with each syllable. "I have the bruises, the recordings, the proof of every vicious word and cruel taunt you've hurled at me over these past months." Harold's brow furrowed, his gaze shifting towards his wife with a newfound wariness. "Faye, is this true? Have you been mistreating Margot?" Before she could respond, I plowed ahead, determined to lay bare the full extent of their betrayal. It's all true, Harold. Every word. And it's not just Faye. Carson has been lying to us all, carrying on an affair right under our noses. A collective gasp rippled through the room, and I could see the realization dawning on their faces, the scales finally falling from their eyes. Allison was the first to speak, her voice trembling with barely contained fury. "You bastard. How could you do this to Margot, to your own children?" Carson opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off with a sharp wave of my hand. "Save it, Carson. I'm done with your lies, your manipulation. From this moment on, you and your mother have no hold over me or my children. We're through." As the chaos erupted around me, with Faye and Carson desperately trying to regain control of the situation, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The shackles of their oppression had finally been broken, and I was free. Free to forge my own path, to build the life I deserved for myself and my babies. And as Harold and Allison rallied to my side, their support and solidarity a balm against the sting of betrayal, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them with the strength and resilience that had carried me through this darkest of storms. The war was won, and I had emerged victorious. "You played me for a fool, Faye." Harold's voice was cold, unyielding, as he stared down his wife, his eyes hard as flint. "All these years, and I never knew the true depths of your cruelty." Faye's lips twisted into a sneer, but I could see the fear flickering in her eyes as the full weight of her actions finally caught up to her. "Harold, please, you don't understand." "Don't I?" He cut her off, his tone sharp as a blade. "You abused my daughter-in-law, threatened to take her children from her. And for what? Some twisted sense of control?" Carson stepped forward, his face etched with desperation. "Dad, Mom, please, we can work through this, as a family." But Harold was having none of it, his gaze swinging towards his son with a mixture of disappointment and disgust. "And you, Carson, how could you let this happen? How could you stand by while your own wife was tormented, all for the sake of keeping up appearances?" Carson flinched as if struck, his shoulders slumping in defeat. I almost felt a pang of pity for him, caught in the crossfire of his own making. Almost. "I never meant for things to go this far," he mumbled, his voice barely audible. "I was just trying to protect Mom, to keep the family together." A bitter laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it. "Protect her? From what, Carson? The consequences of her own actions?" Allison stepped forward, her eyes blazing with righteous fury as she glared at her brother and mother. "You're both pathetic. Margot has shown more strength and resilience in these past few months than either of you could ever hope to muster." A swell of gratitude washed over me at her words, her unwavering support a balm against the sting of betrayal. At least someone in this twisted family had their priorities straight. Faye's gaze swung towards me, her expression a mixture of hatred and begrudging respect. "So what now, Margot? You've had your little tantrum, exposed us all for the world to see. Are you satisfied?" I met her glare head-on, my spine straight and unyielding. Satisfied? Hardly. "I want you out of this house, Faye. Out of our lives, until you can learn to treat me with the respect I deserve as Carson's wife and the mother of your grandchildren." A stunned silence fell over the room, broken only by the sound of Harold's slow, deliberate clapping. "Well said, Margot," he murmured, his gaze never leaving his wife's face. "You heard her, Faye. Pack your things and leave. I won't have you poisoning this family any longer with your bitterness and manipulation." Faye's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, her carefully cultivated facade of control crumbling before our very eyes. "Harold, you can't be serious." But the look in his eyes brooked no argument, no room for negotiation. For once, the iron-willed matriarch had met her match, and she had no choice but to bend to the collective will of those she had sought to dominate for so long. As she stormed from the room, her parting glare promising retribution, I couldn't help but feel a sense of victory, of hard-won triumph. The battle had been fought, the war won, and though the scars of betrayal still stung, I knew that I had emerged stronger, more resilient than ever before. Carson's pleading gaze found mine, his eyes brimming with unshed tears. "Margot, please, give me a chance to make things right. I'll do whatever it takes to earn back your trust, your love." I studied him for a long moment, weighing the sincerity of his words against the weight of his transgressions. In the end, only time would tell if our bond could truly be mended, if the wounds of his infidelity would ever fully heal. But as I felt the gentle flutters of life within me, a reminder of the precious souls I carried, I knew that I owed it to them, and to myself, to at least try. "We'll see, Carson," I murmured, my voice laced with a cautious hope. "We'll see. We've been through hell, but this new chapter is ours." Carson's voice was soft, remorseful, as he cradled one of our newborn twins, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "I promise I'll spend every day making it up to you and our children." I studied his weary features, the lines of exhaustion etched deep into his face after the tumultuous events of the past few months. A part of me still seethed with anger, the memory of his betrayal a festering wound that refused to heal. And yet, as I gazed down at the tiny miracles swaddled in my arms, I knew that harboring that rage would only breed more toxicity, more pain. "I don't know if I can ever fully trust you again, Carson," I murmured, my voice thick with emotion. "What you did, what your mother did, it nearly broke me." He flinched, but nodded, his expression one of resigned acceptance. "I know, and I'll carry that guilt for the rest of my life. But please, Margot, let me prove myself to you, to our family. Give me a chance to be the husband, the father, that you all deserve." A gentle hand on my shoulder made me turn, and I found myself gazing into the kind eyes of Harold, my father-in-law and unexpected ally through this entire ordeal. "He's not the only one who needs to atone," Harold said, his voice laced with regret. "I should have seen what Faye was doing, put a stop to her cruelty before it went too far. For that, I am truly sorry, Margot." I felt a lump form in my throat at his words, touched by his humility and willingness to shoulder the blame. "Thank you, Harold. That means more than you know." Allison stepped forward, her expression one of fierce determination. "We're a family, Margot, and families stick together no matter what. Carson and Faye made mistakes, but we'll get through this together." A warm sense of gratitude washed over me as I looked around at the faces of those who had rallied to my side, who had chosen to stand against the toxic influences that had nearly torn us all apart. Though the road ahead was uncertain, I knew that with their support, their unwavering loyalty, we could overcome any obstacle. "All right," I said, my voice strengthening with each syllable. "We'll take it one day at a time, rebuild what was broken. But know this, Carson, one more misstep, one more lie, and you're out. I won't let our children grow up in an environment of mistrust and manipulation, not again." Carson nodded solemnly, his eyes shining with a mixture of relief and renewed determination. "You have my word, Margot. From now on, it's just us, a family, united and strong." As I gazed down at the precious bundles in my arms, their tiny faces scrunched in peaceful slumber, I felt a surge of fierce love and protectiveness. These children, my children, would know only love, only safety and security. The shadows of the past would not be allowed to dim their futures, not while I still drew breath. Faye's specter lingered in the periphery, a constant reminder of the darkness we had overcome. But in that moment, surrounded by the warmth and solidarity of those who truly mattered, I knew that her hold over us was broken, forever shattered by the resilience of our bond. A new chapter was beginning, one forged in the fires of hardship and betrayal, but tempered by the strength of our love and the unbreakable ties that bound us together as a family. And though the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear. We would face it united, our spirits unbowed, our resolve unshakable, for we were survivors, warriors in our own right, and no force on earth could ever break us again. The sun shone brightly through the kitchen windows as I bustled about, preparing a hearty Sunday lunch for my family. The aroma of roasted chicken and freshly baked bread filled the air, and I couldn't help but smile. These moments of togetherness meant the world to me. As I set the table, my daughter Hannah walked in, her eyes red and puffy. My heart sank. "Mom, I don't know how to say this, but Peter, he's been having an affair for a long time. I found out last night." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. I rushed to her side, enveloping her in a tight embrace. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry." Tears streamed down her face as she clung to me, her body shaking with sobs. The rest of the family trickled in, their chatter dying down as they sensed the somber atmosphere. "What's going on?" my son Michael asked, concern etched on his face. I took a deep breath. Everyone, please sit down. We need to have a family discussion. As they gathered around the table, I held Hannah's hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. Hannah has just found out that Peter has been unfaithful to her for quite some time. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. My husband, David, slammed his fist on the table. That bastard! How could he do this to our little girl? Hannah's lower lip trembled. I don't know what to do, Mom. I feel so lost. I looked her straight in the eye, my voice firm. You listen to me, Hannah. You are not alone in this. We are here for you every step of the way. We will get through this together, as a family. Nods of agreement and words of support echoed around the table. Michael wrapped an arm around his sister's shoulders. We've got your back, sis. Always. As the initial shock subsided, we began to discuss the next steps. I couldn't help but think back to my own troubled marriage with Hannah's father, Richard. The countless arguments, the cold shoulders, and the constant meddling from his mother, Agnes. It had been a difficult time, but I had emerged stronger, more resilient. I knew I had to be that pillar of strength for Hannah now. She needed me more than ever, and I was determined to guide her through this storm. First things first, I said, my voice steady. We need to make sure you and the children are safe, Hannah. If Peter's behavior escalates, we'll take legal action. Hannah nodded, wiping away her tears. I never thought it would come to this, Mom. I always believed we could work through anything. I squeezed her hand again. Sometimes, sweetheart, people change. And not always for the better. But you have to remember, this is not your fault. You deserve so much better than this. As the conversation continued, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. Anger towards Peter for betraying my daughter, sadness for the pain she was going through, but also a fierce determination to protect her, to help her navigate this difficult chapter in her life. I glanced around the table, taking in the faces of my loved ones. This was what family was all about, being there for each other through the good times and the bad. And I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that we would weather this storm together. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the kitchen, I hugged Hannah tightly. We'll take this one day at a time, sweetheart. You're not alone. You have all of us, and we will never let you fall. With those words, I silently vowed to be Hannah's rock, her guiding light through the darkness, because that's what mothers do. We love, we protect, and we fight for our children, no matter what life throws our way. As I sat with Hannah in her living room, the weight of her revelation hung heavy in the air. My mind drifted back to my own troubled marriage with Richard, and the struggles I faced with his mother, Agnes. I remember how Agnes treated me, I said softly, taking Hannah's hand in mine. She never thought I was good enough, Hannah. Agnes always picked Richard's side, no matter how much I tried. You're not going through this alone. Hannah's eyes welled up with tears. I just don't understand, Mom. How could Peter do this to me, to our family? I sighed, the memories of my own pain resurfacing. Sometimes people change, sweetheart, and not always for the better, but you have to remember, this is not your fault. You deserve so much better than this. Just then the front door opened and Peter walked in, his face etched with annoyance. What's going on here? He demanded, eyeing me suspiciously. Hannah stood up, her voice trembling. Peter, we need to talk about your affair. Peter's eyes widened and he scoffed. I don't know what you're talking about, Hannah. You're being ridiculous. I couldn't hold back any longer. Don't you dare lie to her, Peter. She knows the truth, and so do I. Peter's face reddened with anger. This is none of your business, Nora. Stay out of it. I stood my ground, my voice firm. It became my business the moment you broke my daughter's heart. How could you do this to her, to your children? Peter rolled his eyes. Oh, please, spare me the lecture. You have no idea what goes on in our marriage. Hannah's voice cut through the tension. Enough, Peter. I can't do this anymore. I want you to leave. Peter's jaw dropped. You can't be serious, Hannah. You're overreacting. I placed a supportive hand on Hannah's shoulder. She's not overreacting, Peter. She's standing up for herself, for what's right. As Peter stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him, Hannah collapsed into my arms, sobbing. I don't know what to do, Mom. I'm so scared. I held her tightly, my heart breaking for my daughter. I know, sweetheart, but you're not alone. We'll get through this together, I promise. The next day, I accompanied Hannah to her in-laws' house to break the news to Peter's mother, Elaine. As we sat in their pristine living room, Elaine's cold eyes bore into us. "What's this all about?" she asked, her voice dripping with disdain. Hannah took a deep breath. "Elaine, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but Peter has been having an affair." Elaine's eyes narrowed. "And you believe this nonsense, Hannah? Really?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "It's not nonsense, Elaine. Peter admitted it himself." Elaine scoffed. "Well, if it's true, then you must have done something to drive him away, Hannah. A man doesn't just cheat on his wife for no reason." Hannah's eyes filled with tears, and I felt a surge of anger course through me. "How dare you blame Hannah for this, Elaine? Your son is the one who broke his vows, who betrayed his family." Elaine stood up, her voice rising. "I will not sit here and listen to you accuse my son of such things. If your daughter couldn't keep her husband satisfied, that's her problem, not mine." As we left Elaine's house, I couldn't shake the feeling of déjà vu. The way she had spoken to Hannah, the blame she had placed on her, it was all too familiar. It was the same way Agnes had treated me during my marriage to Richard. I turned to Hannah, my resolve hardening. "We're not going to let them break you, sweetheart. You're stronger than they think. We'll find a way through this, together." As we drove home, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in my daughter. She was facing her darkest hour with grace and strength, just as I had all those years ago. And I knew, without a doubt, that we would weather this storm, no matter what obstacles lay ahead. Weeks passed, and the situation only seemed to worsen. Peter had started openly dating his lover, Kate, a younger coworker, humiliating Hannah and further straining their marriage. I watched helplessly as my daughter's once vibrant spirit slowly diminished, replaced by a constant cloud of sadness and despair. One afternoon, I decided to visit Hannah, hoping to offer some comfort and support. As I walked into her house, I was greeted by the sound of raised voices coming from the living room. I cautiously made my way towards the commotion, only to find Hannah and Elaine engaged in a heated argument. "You've failed as a wife, Hannah. Peter deserves better," Elaine cruelly told her, her words dripping with venom. Hannah's eyes welled up with tears, and I felt a surge of anger course through my veins. I stepped forward, placing a protective arm around my daughter's shoulders. "How dare you speak to her like that, Elaine?" I said, my voice trembling with rage. "Can't you see how much she's hurting?" Elaine scoffed, her eyes narrowing. "Oh, please, Nora. Don't act like you're some saint. You couldn't keep your own husband happy, and now look at your daughter. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, does it?" I felt as if I had been slapped. The painful memories of my own failed marriage came rushing back, threatening to overwhelm me, but I refused to let Elaine see me crumble. I had to be strong for Hannah's sake. "You're wrong, Elaine," I said, my voice steady. "Hannah is not to blame for Peter's actions. He made the choice to betray his family, and he alone bears that responsibility." Elaine rolled her eyes. "Keep telling yourself that, Nora. But the truth is, if Hannah had been a better wife, none of this would have happened." With that, she stormed out of the house, leaving Hannah and me in stunned silence. I turned to my daughter, pulling her into a tight embrace as she sobbed against my shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I feel like such a failure." I pulled back, cupping her face in my hands. "Listen to me, Hannah. You are not a failure. You are a strong, beautiful woman who deserves so much better than this. We're going to get through this together, I promise." As the days turned into weeks, I watched as Peter continued to flaunt his affair, parading Kate around town like some sort of trophy. Elaine, ever the enabler, stood by his side, defending his actions and blaming Hannah for the breakdown of their marriage. I felt my resolve harden with each passing day. I couldn't stand by and watch my daughter suffer any longer. I had to do something, anything, to help her break free from this toxic situation. One evening, as I sat with Hannah in her living room, I broached the subject of separation. "Hannah, sweetheart, I know this is difficult, but have you considered leaving Peter? You don't have to continue living like this." Hannah's eyes filled with tears. "I've thought about it, Mom, but I'm so scared. What about the children? What will people think?" I took her hand in mine, my voice firm. "The only thing that matters is your happiness and well-being, Hannah. You have to do what's best for you and the kids, and as for what people think, to hell with them. You have nothing to be ashamed of." Hannah nodded, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. You're right, Mom. I can't keep living like this. I need to be strong, for myself and for Emily and Jason. I smiled, pride swelling in my chest. That's my girl. We're going to get through this, Hannah. You're stronger than you think. We'll find a way. As I left Hannah's house that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that a storm was brewing on the horizon. But I knew without a doubt that we would weather it together, no matter what challenges lay ahead. My daughter's happiness and freedom were worth fighting for, and I was ready to do whatever it took to help her reclaim her life. In the weeks that followed, I watched as Hannah slowly began to push back against Peter and Elaine's toxic influence. Encouraged by my unwavering support, she started to stand up for herself, refusing to be a victim any longer. One afternoon, as we sat in my kitchen sipping tea, Hannah confided in me about her plan to gather evidence of Peter's infidelity. I need to protect Emily and Jason, Mom, she said, her voice trembling. If we do end up separating, I want to make sure I have proof of Peter's affair to ensure the kids stay with me. I nodded, my heart swelling with pride at my daughter's strength and determination. You're doing the right thing, Hannah. You don't have to continue living like this. We're stronger than they think. We will find a way. Just then, the doorbell rang. I excused myself and went to answer it, surprised to find my sister Diane standing on the other side. Diane, what a pleasant surprise. Come in, come in. As we settled back in the kitchen, Diane's eyes fell on Hannah, and she immediately sensed that something was amiss. What's going on, sweetheart? She asked, her voice filled with concern. Hannah took a deep breath and began to recount the events of the past few months, from Peter's affair to Elaine's cruel treatment. As she spoke, I could see the anger and empathy building in Diane's eyes. Oh, Hannah, she said, reaching across the table to take her hand. I'm so sorry you're going through this. But you know what? You're not alone. I've been there too. Hannah's eyes widened. You have? Diane nodded, a sad smile on her face. Years ago, my ex-husband cheated on me. It was the most painful experience of my life. But you know what I learned? That I was stronger than I ever thought possible. And so are you, Hannah. As Diane shared her own story of betrayal and resilience, I could see the glimmer of hope returning to Hannah's eyes. She had always looked up to Diane as a mother figure, and hearing that she had overcome a similar situation seemed to give her the strength she needed to keep fighting. Over the next few days, Hannah and I worked together to gather evidence of Peter's affair. We compiled text messages, emails, and even hired a private investigator to capture photos of Peter and Kate together. It was a difficult and emotionally draining process, but we knew it was necessary to protect Hannah and the children. As we sat in my living room, sorting through the evidence, Hannah suddenly broke down in tears. I can't believe this is happening, Mom, she sobbed. I never thought I'd be in this position, fighting for my marriage, my family. I pulled her into a tight embrace, stroking her hair as she cried. I know, sweetheart, it's not fair, but you're doing the right thing. You're standing up for yourself, for your happiness. And that takes an incredible amount of courage. Hannah pulled back, wiping her tears. But what about Emily and Jason? They need their father. Am I being selfish, putting my own happiness above their needs? I shook my head, my voice firm. Absolutely not, Hannah. Your children need a mother who is happy, healthy, and respected. They need to see you standing up for yourself, showing them that it's never okay to accept abuse or infidelity. You're setting an example for them, one of strength and self-worth. As the days turned into weeks, I watched as Hannah continued to gather her strength, preparing herself for the battle ahead. She knew that confronting Peter and Elaine would not be easy, but she was determined to reclaim her life, to build a better future for herself and her children. And through it all, I was there by her side, along with Diane, offering our unwavering support and love. We were a team, a united front against the darkness that threatened to tear our family apart. And together, we would find a way to overcome, to emerge stronger than ever before. The day I received a frantic call from Hannah, I knew something was terribly wrong. Her voice was shaking, and I could hear the tears in her words as she spoke. Mom, I need you to come over right away. It's Peter. He's gone too far this time. I didn't hesitate for a moment. I grabbed my keys and rushed to Hannah's house, my heart pounding in my chest. When I arrived, I found her sitting at the kitchen table, her face pale and her eyes red from crying. "What happened, sweetheart?" I asked, taking a seat beside her. Hannah took a deep breath, her hands trembling. "I found out that Peter is planning to move Kate into our home. He wants her to live with us, to be a part of our family." I felt a surge of anger course through my veins. How could Peter be so cruel, so selfish, to not only betray his wife, but to flaunt his affair in front of his children, in the home they shared as a family? I confronted him about it, Hannah continued, her voice growing stronger. I told him that if he wants to be with Kate, he can have her, but he will not turn our home into some playground for his affair. I nodded, pride swelling in my chest. "Good for you, Hannah. You did the right thing, standing up for yourself and your children." But even as I spoke those words, I could see the fear in Hannah's eyes. She knew that this confrontation was only the beginning, that Peter and Elaine would not take her defiance lying down. And she was right. In the days that followed, Peter's backlash was fierce. He raged at Hannah, calling her unstable, unfit to be a mother. He threatened to take the children away from her, to paint her as a villain in the eyes of the court. Elaine, ever the manipulator, only fueled the flames. She whispered poisonous words in Peter's ear, telling him that Hannah was trying to destroy their family, that she was a danger to their children. I watched as Hannah struggled to maintain a sense of normalcy for Emily and Jason, even as the tension in the house reached a boiling point. She put on a brave face for them, reading them bedtime stories and helping them with their homework, all while Peter and Elaine's cruelty loomed over her like a dark cloud. But through it all, Hannah remained strong. She leaned on me and Diane for support, finding solace in our unwavering love and encouragement. And slowly but surely, I could see a change in her, a newfound resilience and determination that refused to be broken. One evening, as we sat together in my living room, Hannah turned to me with a fire in her eyes. "I want a separation, Mom. I can't keep living like this in a house filled with so much hatred and betrayal." I took her hand in mine, squeezing it tightly. "I'm so proud of you, Hannah. You're doing the right thing for yourself and for your children." Hannah nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "I know it won't be easy, Mom. Peter and Elaine will fight me every step of the way, but I'm ready for it. I'm ready to take my life back, to build a better future for myself and my kids." As I looked at my daughter, I saw a strength in her that I had never seen before. She had been through so much, endured so much pain and heartache, but she had emerged from it all with a fierce determination to reclaim her happiness. And I knew in that moment that no matter what challenges lay ahead, no matter how hard Peter and Elaine tried to break her, Hannah would never give up. She would keep fighting, keep pushing forward, until she had built the life she deserved, a life filled with love, respect, and the unbreakable bonds of family. As the weeks turned into months, Diane, Hannah, and I worked tirelessly to gather evidence of Peter's infidelity and expose his true nature to the world. We knew that the only way to truly break free from his manipulation and cruelty was to reveal the truth, to show everyone the man he really was behind closed doors. It wasn't easy. Peter was clever, always careful to cover his tracks and maintain his public image as a devoted husband and father. But we were determined, driven by a fierce desire to protect Hannah and her children from any further harm. We started by hiring a private investigator, someone who could discreetly follow Peter and Kate and capture their indiscretions on camera. It was a risky move, but one we knew was necessary to build a strong case against him. As the evidence began to mount, I could see a change in Hannah. She walked with her head held high, a newfound confidence in her step. She was no longer the broken, defeated woman she had been just months before, but a fierce warrior, ready to fight for her freedom and her family. One evening, as we sat together in Diane's living room, poring over the latest batch of photos and videos, I turned to Hannah with a determined look in my eye. "It's time everyone sees Peter for who he really is. He can't keep hiding behind his lies." Hannah nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "I'm ready, Mom. Let's do this." The next day we put our plan into action. We sent the evidence to Peter's employer, his colleagues, and even his friends and family. We posted it on social media, making sure that everyone in his circle saw the truth about the man they thought they knew. The response was immediate and explosive. Peter's reputation crumbled overnight as the community reeled from the shock of his betrayal. His employer fired him on the spot, disgusted by his behavior and the damage it had caused to their company's image. Elaine, too, felt the backlash of her son's actions. Her social circle began to shun her, appalled by her unwavering support of Peter's reprehensible behavior. She was left isolated and alone, forced to confront the consequences of her own manipulation and cruelty. But perhaps the most surprising development was Kate's reaction. When the evidence of her affair with Peter went public, she panicked, fearing the damage it would cause to her own reputation. In a moment of self-preservation, she abandoned Peter, leaving him to face the fallout alone. I watched as Peter's world crumbled around him as he lost his job, his lover, and his standing in the community. A part of me felt a twisted sense of satisfaction, seeing him finally face the consequences of his actions. But mostly, I just felt relief. Relief that Hannah was finally free from his grip, that she could start to rebuild her life without fear or manipulation. As the dust began to settle, I sat with Hannah in her living room, holding her hand tightly in mine. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. You did it. You broke free." Hannah smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mom, without you and Diane. You gave me the strength to keep fighting, even when I thought I had nothing left." I pulled her into a tight embrace, my own tears falling freely. "That's what family is for, Hannah. We lift each other up. We fight for each other, no matter what." As we sat there, holding each other close, I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges and obstacles to overcome, wounds to heal, and trust to rebuild. But I also knew that Hannah was strong enough to face whatever lay ahead, that she had the love and support of her family to guide her through. And as I looked into my daughter's eyes, I saw a flicker of hope, a glimmer of the bright future that awaited her. A future free from pain and betrayal, filled with love, laughter, and the unbreakable bonds of family. Just when I thought the worst was behind us, Elaine showed up at my doorstep, her face a mask of fury and desperation. I hadn't seen her since the truth about Peter's affair had come to light, and I knew that her sudden appearance could only mean trouble. "We need to talk, Nora," she said, pushing past me and into the living room. "This family is falling apart, and we need to put this behind us." I followed her inside, my guard up and my resolve firm. "And how do you propose we do that, Elaine? Your son has caused immeasurable pain to my daughter and her children. There's no easy fix for that." Elaine whirled around, her eyes narrowing. "Don't you dare put all the blame on Peter. Hannah played a role in this mess, too. If she had been a better wife, none of this would have happened." I felt my blood boil at her words, the same twisted logic she had been using for months to justify Peter's actions. "How dare you, Elaine? Hannah has done nothing but love and support your son, even when he didn't deserve it. She is not to blame for his choices." Elaine scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. "Oh, please. Hannah has always been weak, always playing the victim. It's time she took responsibility for her own failings." I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, Hannah emerged from the kitchen, her eyes blazing with a fierce determination I had never seen before. "Enough, Elaine," she said, her voice steady and strong. "I am done letting you manipulate and control me. I am done letting you make excuses for Peter's behavior. This ends now." Elaine's eyes widened in surprise, clearly not expecting Hannah's newfound strength. "Hannah, be reasonable. We need to think about the family, about the children." Hannah shook her head, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "That's exactly what I'm doing, Elaine. I'm thinking about my children's well-being, about the kind of example I want to set for them. And that example is one of strength, of self-respect, of refusing to accept abuse and betrayal." I watched in awe as Hannah stood tall, her shoulders squared, and her head held high. She was no longer the broken, defeated woman she had been just months before, but a fierce warrior, ready to fight for her happiness and her family. Elaine's face twisted in anger, her manipulative facade crumbling before our eyes. "You ungrateful little bitch. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By tearing this family apart." I stepped forward, placing a protective arm around Hannah's shoulders. No, Elaine, you tore this family apart the moment you chose to enable and defend Peter's actions. You have no one to blame but yourself. Elaine's eyes darted between us, desperation and fury warring in her gaze. But as she looked at Hannah, at the unwavering strength and determination in her eyes, she seemed to deflate, her shoulders slumping in defeat. Fine, she spat, turning on her heel and storming towards the door. Have it your way. But don't come crying to me when you realize what a mistake you've made. As the door slammed behind her, I turned to Hannah, my heart swelling with pride and love. I am so proud of you, sweetheart. You stood up for yourself, for your children. You showed her that she no longer has any power over you. Hannah smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. I couldn't have done it without you, Mom, without your love and support. You gave me the strength to keep fighting, even when I thought I had nothing left. I pulled her into a tight embrace, my own tears falling freely. That's what mothers do, Hannah. We fight for our children, no matter what. As we held each other close, I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges and obstacles to overcome, wounds to heal, and trust to rebuild. But I also knew that Hannah was strong enough to face whatever lay ahead, that she had the love and support of her family to guide her through. And as I looked into my daughter's eyes, I saw a flicker of hope, a glimmer of the bright future that awaited her, a future free from pain and betrayal, filled with love, laughter, and the unbreakable bonds of family. Months had passed since Hannah's confrontation with Elaine, and life had slowly begun to settle into a new normal. With the help of Diane and me, Hannah had found a cozy new home for herself, Emily and Jason, far away from the painful memories of her old life with Peter. As I pulled up to Hannah's new house, I couldn't help but smile at the sight of Emily and Jason playing in the front yard, their laughter ringing out like music in the warm summer air. Hannah stood on the porch, watching them with a contented smile on her face, and I felt my heart swell with pride and love. "Grandma?" Emily and Jason shouted as I stepped out of the car, running to greet me with open arms. I scooped them up in a big hug, planting kisses on their cheeks. "Oh, how I've missed you two! Look at how big you've gotten!" Hannah walked over to join us, her smile widening as she watched our joyful reunion. "They've been asking about you all week, Mom. They couldn't wait for your visit." I wrapped an arm around Hannah's shoulders, giving her a squeeze. "And I couldn't wait to see all of you. This new place looks wonderful, sweetheart. You've done an amazing job making it a home." As we walked inside, I marveled at the warmth and love that seemed to radiate from every corner of the house. Family photos lined the walls, and the air was filled with the delicious aroma of Hannah's cooking. We settled around the dinner table, passing dishes and sharing stories, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of deep contentment wash over me. This was what family was all about: love, laughter, and the unbreakable bonds that tied us together. As the evening wore on, Hannah put the children to bed and joined Diane and me in the living room, a peaceful smile on her face. "I never thought I could feel this happy again," she said softly. "After everything that happened with Peter and Elaine, I wasn't sure I'd ever find my way back to a place of joy and stability." Diane reached over and took Hannah's hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "But you did, sweetheart. You found your strength, your resilience. You fought for your happiness, and look at where it's brought you." I nodded, my own eyes filling with tears. "Diane is right, Hannah. You've come so far, and I am so incredibly proud of you. You've shown your children what it means to be brave, to stand up for yourself and your happiness." Hannah smiled, her own tears spilling over. "I couldn't have done it without you both. Your love and support have meant everything to me. I don't know where I'd be without my family." As we sat there, basking in the warmth and love of our little family, I couldn't help but think back on the journey that had brought us to this moment. It had been a road filled with pain and heartache, with betrayal and loss. But through it all, we had held on to each other, drawing strength from the unbreakable bonds of family. Suddenly, the phone rang, breaking the peaceful silence. Hannah frowned as she glanced at the caller ID, her face growing pale. "It's Elaine," she said softly. I felt a flicker of anger and protectiveness surge through me, but Hannah just shook her head, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "You know what? I don't need to answer that. I don't owe her anything." With a decisive click, she silenced the phone and turned back to us, her eyes shining with a newfound strength and peace. "This is our fresh start, kids. We're going to be just fine." As I looked around at the faces of my loved ones, I knew that Hannah was right. We had each other, and that was all that mattered. The bonds of family had proven unbreakable, and together we could weather any storm that came our way. And as we sat there laughing and talking late into the night, I felt a sense of deep gratitude wash over me. We had emerged from the darkness stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before, and I knew, without a doubt, that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together as a family. The dinner table was set with Mom's finest china, the kind she only brought out for special occasions. The smell of roasted chicken wafted through the air, making my mouth water. It should have been a pleasant family gathering, but the tension was palpable. "Dee, dear, you really should have made more of an effort with your appearance," Mom said, eyeing my casual outfit with disdain. "This is a special night." I forced a smile, ignoring the jab. "It smells delicious, Mom. Thank you for hosting us." Tom squeezed my hand under the table, his way of offering silent support. At least he was on my side, or so I thought. As we started eating, Mom launched into a monologue about the importance of family legacy and carrying on the family name. Her pointed glances in my direction made the subtext clear. My inability to have children was a constant source of disappointment. "Which is why," she continued, "we've been discussing some exciting changes for our family's future." Tom shifted uncomfortably in his seat and a knot formed in my stomach. This didn't sound good. "You see, Dee," Mom said, her voice sickly sweet, "while we love you dearly, the fact remains that you're unable to provide an heir. A great injustice, really, given how devoted Tom has been." I felt Tom tense beside me, but he remained silent. Anger and hurt bubbled up inside me as Mom's words sank in. "So, we've decided to welcome a new addition to the family, a younger, more fertile woman who can give us the grandchildren we so desperately desire." The room spun as I processed her words. A new wife for Tom? How could he betray me like this? "You can't be serious," I managed, my voice shaking. "Tom, tell her she's out of her mind." But Tom wouldn't meet my gaze, his eyes fixed on his plate. The truth hit me like a ton of bricks. He was in on this twisted plan. "Don't look so shocked, dear," Mom said, her smile never wavering. "This was always the arrangement. You knew your role was temporary." Memories of our early days together flooded my mind, the promises of forever, the dreams we'd shared. All lies, it seemed. "How could you do this to me?" I asked Tom, fighting back tears. "After everything we've been through." He finally looked up, his expression a mixture of guilt and resignation. "I'm sorry, Dee, but my mother is right. We need an heir. It's for the good of the family." The betrayal cut deep, a knife twisting in my gut. In that moment, I saw my husband and mother-in-law for who they truly were, manipulative, selfish people who viewed me as disposable. As the shock gave way to anger, I made a decision. I would not go quietly. If they wanted a war, I would give them one they'd never forget. Pushing back from the table, I met Mom's cold stare with newfound resolve. "You haven't seen the last of me," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil raging inside. "This isn't over, not by a long shot." With that, I turned and walked out, leaving my shattered dreams behind. But a new fire burned within me, a determination to fight for what was rightfully mine. They wanted an heir? Well, they were about to get more than they bargained for. A few days after the disastrous dinner, Mom called to invite me over for a casual gathering with some of the community women. I knew it was a trap, but I also saw an opportunity to start fighting back. As I walked into her immaculate living room, I was immediately surrounded by a group of well-dressed, gossiping ladies. Mom beamed at the center of it all, like a spider overseeing her web. "Ladies, you all know my dear daughter-in-law, Dee," she announced, gesturing for me to join her. "Come, let me properly introduce you." One by one, she paraded me in front of the women, each introduction laced with subtle digs about my age, my childlessness, my perceived inadequacies as a wife. The words stung, but I kept my composure, forcing a polite smile. "This is Marjorie, president of the gardening club. Isn't it a shame Dee has never shown an interest in cultivating life?" Mom said, with a pointed look. Marjorie gave me a pitying glance before turning away, whispering to her friend. It went on like that for what felt like an eternity, Mom's barbs growing sharper with each new acquaintance. Through it all, Tom lounged in the corner, nursing a drink and pointedly ignoring the spectacle. As the gathering wore on, I noticed a few of the women stealing sympathetic glances my way. Perhaps I had more allies than I realized. During a lull, I found myself beside Judith, an older woman known for her sharp wit and even sharper tongue. "Don't pay her any mind, dear," she murmured, patting my arm. "We all know Lorraine's just bitter because her own daughter abandoned her years ago." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued by this juicy bit of information. Judith gave me a conspiratorial wink before moving on. Suddenly, the endless parade of introductions took on a new light. These women weren't just Mom's adoring sycophants. They were a wealth of knowledge about her deepest insecurities and darkest secrets. And with a few well-placed allies, I could start turning the tide. As the gathering finally wound down, I made a point of thanking Mom for her hospitality with a pointed smile. She narrowed her eyes, sensing the shift in my demeanor. "This isn't over, Dolores," she hissed under her breath. "Not by a long shot." "Wouldn't have it any other way," I replied coolly, already formulating my next move. On my way out, I caught Tom's eye for the briefest moment. His gaze was hollow, empty, as if he'd already checked out of our marriage long ago. Fine by me. The less he was involved, the easier it would be to dismantle his mother's twisted schemes from the inside out. As I drove away from Mom's house, I felt a newfound sense of determination. She might have won the battle, but the war was just beginning. With a few unexpected allies in my corner, I was ready to fight for my life and make her regret ever crossing me. A few days after the disastrous community gathering, Lorraine ambushed me with another cruel demand. "We need to schedule you for a fertility test," she announced over coffee, not even looking up from her magazine. I nearly choked on my drink. "Excuse me? Why on earth would I do that?" She fixed me with a steely gaze. "To prove once and for all whether you're capable of providing an heir. If the results are positive, perhaps we can revisit this ridiculous notion of bringing in another woman." The audacity of her request stunned me into silence. After everything they'd put me through, they still expected me to jump through hoops? I opened my mouth to protest, but Tom cut me off. "Just do it, Dee," he said flatly. "The sooner we get this settled, the better for everyone." His callous disregard for my feelings felt like a slap in the face. Didn't my husband have any loyalty left? Realizing I was outnumbered, I agreed to the test, if only to buy myself some time. The procedure itself was mercifully quick, but the waiting was agonizing. Each day that ticked by, I imagined Lorraine growing more smug, more convinced that I would fail this latest trial. I couldn't let her win, not this time. Finally, the call came. The doctor's tone was carefully neutral as she relayed the results. I was still fertile, very much capable of conceiving a child. An immense weight lifted from my shoulders, and for a fleeting moment I felt a glimmer of hope that this nightmare might actually end. That hope was swiftly extinguished when I shared the news with Lorraine and Tom. Rather than being pleased, or even relieved, Lorraine's expression remained cold and calculating. "Well, isn't that interesting?" she mused. "Though I can't say I'm surprised. These things have a way of working themselves out in the end." Tom said nothing, his face an inscrutable mask. In that moment, I realized with sickening clarity that the test had never been about giving me a fair chance. To them, I was an inconvenient obstacle to be disposed of, no matter what the results showed. Memories came flooding back of those early days with Tom, when we discussed having children of our own. I remembered the tenderness in his eyes, the excitement in his voice as he painted pictures of our future family. Now, it was as if that man had never existed, replaced by this hollow stranger who valued his mother's whims above all else. As Lorraine droned on about needing to explore other options, I tuned her out, my mind racing. For weeks, I'd been reactionary, constantly scrambling to counter her latest move. But no more. It was time to take control of the situation, to turn the tables on these two manipulators before they could do any more damage. I would play along for now, I decided, lulling them into a false sense of complacency. And then, when they least expected it, I would strike, exposing their deceit and hypocrisy for all to see. This time, I would be the one dictating the terms. Lorraine's voice finally broke through my reverie. Are you listening, Dolores? We need to start interviewing potential surrogates immediately. I met her gaze, my expression carefully neutral. Of course, whatever you think is best. The words tasted like acid, but I forced myself to smile. Let them believe they'd won, for now. Soon enough, they would realize they had underestimated me at their peril. This was no longer just a fight for my marriage. It was a battle for my dignity, my self-worth. And I didn't intend to lose. That night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, a sickening realization washed over me. This entire marriage had been a sham, a twisted game orchestrated by Lorraine, with Tom as her willing pawn. Memories came flooding back of our early days together, when we'd excitedly discussed our hopes and dreams for starting a family. I remembered Tom's tender reassurances that we had all the time in the world, that children would come when the moment was right. We'll figure it out together, babe, he'd murmured, pulling me close. No need to rush into anything. Now, in the harsh light of day, those words rang hollow, a carefully constructed lie designed to lure me into Lorraine's trap, because the truth was they'd never intended for me to be a permanent part of this family. The signs had been there all along, but I'd been too blinded by love and optimism to see them. Like the time Tom casually mentioned that his parents expected him to provide them with grandchildren, no matter what, or the way Lorraine had bristled at my reluctance to move into her home after our wedding. It's just until we get on our feet, she'd said with a saccharine smile. You don't mind a brief stint under my roof, do you, dear? That brief stint had turned into years of walking on eggshells, enduring her endless critiques and power plays, all while Tom stood idly by, ceding more and more control to the woman who'd raised him. I should have run then, I realized, escaped before allowing myself to be slowly suffocated by their toxic dynamic. But some foolish part of me had clung to the belief that love could conquer all, that Tom would eventually grow a spine and stand up to his mother's manipulations. As I replayed our heated argument from earlier, any remaining doubts evaporated. Tom's callous admission that I was always meant to be a temporary solution, easily discarded once a more suitable option presented itself. It was a brutal awakening, exposing the true depths of his betrayal. White-hot anger surged through me, quickly followed by a wave of icy determination. If they thought I would simply slink away in disgrace, they had vastly underestimated me. I would stay and fight, unleashing a vengeance so exquisite, so utterly devastating, that they would have no choice but to rue the day they dared to cross me. Tom's meek compliance would be his undoing, the rope by which I hanged his pathetic dreams of legacy and inheritance. And Lorraine, that smug, domineering shrew, would find her world crumbling around her, victim to the same twisted machinations she'd so gleefully inflicted on me. A feral grin spread across my face as delicious scenarios began taking shape. This was no longer about salvaging some sliver of dignity. It was about complete and utter obliteration, leaving their selfish ambitions in ashes around them. Let them believe they'd won, I decided. Let them bask in their false sense of victory. Because soon enough, the tables would turn, and I would be the one dictating the terms of our little game. Closing my eyes, I could already envision their stunned, horrified expressions as the truth finally dawned. They wanted an heir to continue their precious legacy? Well, they were about to get far more than they bargained for. In the days that followed, Lorraine's campaign of emotional torture intensified. Everywhere I turned, she was there, chipping away at my self-worth with her snide remarks and undisguised looks of contempt. Really, Dolores? You're gonna wear that? She'd eyeing my outfit with disdain. So frumpy. No wonder Tom's lost interest. I grit my teeth, determined not to rise to the bait. Losing my composure was exactly what she wanted. At first, Tom stayed out of it, content to let his mother do the heavy lifting when it came to demoralizing me. But soon enough, even he joined the fray, parroting Lorraine's insults about my inability to give him a child, my failure as a wife. Maybe if you'd put in a bit more effort, he sneered one morning as I headed off to work, my sole refuge from the toxicity at home. Even there, I found no peace. Lorraine's constant demands that I contribute more financially to secure the family's future left me drained at the end of each day. I dutifully wrote a check for $1,000 every month, a sick feeling settling in my gut as I did. So this was my reward for years of loyal service, to be bled dry by the very people who claimed to care for me. The breaking point came when Lorraine announced, with fake sweetness, "The surrogates will be here this weekend for interviews. You'll want to be on your best behavior, Dolores." I could no longer hold my tongue. "Are you kidding me? After everything you've put me through, you expect me to just roll over for this?" Tom's eyes went wide, but Lorraine simply shrugged, unperturbed. "Well, I did give you a chance to do things the proper way, but you've made your choice clear." "My choice?" I sputtered, indignant rage bubbling up inside me. "When did I ever choose any of this? You two cowards dragged me into this nightmare against my will." In that moment, Tom should have spoken up, should have defended me as his wife. Instead, he shrank back, cowed by his mother's withering glare. "That's enough out of you," Lorraine said coolly. "Why don't you run along like a good girl? The adults need to discuss family matters." The derisive dismissal was like a slap in the face. I opened my mouth, fully prepared to unleash the torrent of hurt and anger that had been building up for months. But something stopped me. Suddenly, it all became clear. This was what Lorraine wanted. She thrived on confrontation, on exerting her dominance over me through sheer force of will. Any outburst on my part would only serve to feed her power trip. A strange sense of calm washed over me, and I felt the fight go out of me, at least for the moment. Straightening my shoulders, I met Lorraine's gaze steadily. "You know what? You're right," I said, keeping my voice even. "I'm just going to step aside and let you two continue making decisions for this family. Seems to be working out so well for you both." Lorraine blinked, clearly thrown by my uncharacteristic acquiescence. But her smugness quickly returned. "Finally, she sees reason. I knew you'd come around eventually, dear." I didn't bother responding, turning on my heel and heading for the door. Let them think they'd beaten me. Let them revel in their hollow victory. Because in that moment, I knew the game had changed. No more reacting, no more falling into their twisted manipulations. From now on, I would be the one dictating the terms, and by the time I was done, they wouldn't know what hit them. I should have seen it coming, really. The signs were all there. Lorraine's increasingly smug demeanor, Tom's guilty silences whenever I tried to discuss our future. But when I walked through the front door that fateful evening, the harsh reality still hit me like a ton of bricks. There, perched on the living room sofa like she owned the place, was a young woman I'd never seen before. Sleek and polished, with an air of self-assurance that could only come from years of being catered to. This was her, I realized with sickening clarity. The usurper they'd handpicked to take my place. "Ah, Dolores, there you are," Lorraine said, rising to greet me with a saccharine smile. "Allow me to introduce Angela. She'll be joining our family shortly." The smug emphasis on those last few words left no doubt as to Angela's intended role. I felt bile rise in my throat as Tom shifted awkwardly beside the interloper, unable to meet my gaze. "You've got to be kidding me," I managed, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Tom, please tell me this is some kind of sick joke." For a fleeting moment, I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Shame, maybe, or the last vestiges of the man I'd fallen in love with. But then Lorraine stepped between us, her expression hardening. "Don't be so dramatic, Dolores. You knew this day was coming." She gestured dismissively in my direction. "She's getting on in years, and her condition makes her unsuitable for carrying on the family name. Isn't that right, dear?" Tom said nothing, his silence hanging heavy in the air. Anger and hurt welled up inside me, quickly segueing into a cold, bitter sense of resignation. After everything, he still couldn't find the courage to stand up for me, for our marriage. "You're despicable, both of you," I spat, glaring at Lorraine and the smirking Angela in turn. "Using people's lives like this, discarding them when they no longer serve your purposes. I don't know what's worse, your cruelty or your cowardice." Lorraine merely shrugged, unperturbed. "Strong words from someone in your precarious position, but I suppose that's to be expected." With a sickening lurch, I realized she was holding something in her hands, a manila envelope, no doubt containing the final insult they had prepared for me. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked warily, but I already knew the answer. "Well, we can't very well have you lingering about once Angela arrives, now can we?" Lorraine replied, her smile taking on a predatory edge. These are the divorce papers, which will allow you to exit this family with a modicum of dignity intact, though I shudder to think how you'll get by without us." The room started to spin as she extended the envelope toward me. This was it, the moment I'd been dreading, the point of no return, where I would have to decide whether to go down swinging or slink away in disgrace. Part of me wanted to fight, to rage against the injustice of it all. But another, wearier part knew that there was no point in prolonging this toxic charade any further. Lorraine and Tom had made their decision, callously prioritizing their twisted idea of legacy over anything resembling basic human decency. So with a heavy heart and a lump in my throat, I reached out and took the envelope, already feeling the weight of my shattered dreams pressing down on me. "Don't worry, I'll be just fine without you," I said, mustering what little dignity I had left. In fact, I'd say the world just got a whole lot brighter. Lorraine's mocking laughter followed me out the door, but I didn't care. The papers were signed, the bridge burned, and as I drove away from that wretched house, I made a silent vow to myself. One day soon, they would regret ever underestimating me. For now, though, I needed to lick my wounds and chart a new course, one free from their toxic influence. But mark my words, vengeance would be mine. They wanted to cast me aside like some unwanted burden? Well, they were about to learn just how heavy that burden could become. In the aftermath of my brutal ousting from the family, I found myself adrift, reeling from the depths of Lorraine and Tom's betrayal, yet simultaneously liberated from their toxic grip. With nowhere else to turn, I did the only thing I could. I went home, back to the warm embrace of my parents and the life I'd left behind so many years ago. "That son of a bitch!" My father growled when I recounted the sordid tale, fists clenching with a rare burst of anger. "After everything you sacrificed for that family." Mom simply held me close, her gentle shushing the only balm for the ragged wound in my heart. In their cozy little ranch home, surrounded by decades of cherished memories, I finally felt safe enough to process the devastating turn my life had taken. But even as I grieved my shattered dreams, a newfound sense of determination took root. I was done being a victim, done letting Lorraine and her cronies dictate my worth. It was time to show them and myself what I was truly capable of when freed from their toxic influence. The first step, I decided, was to rebuild my financial security. While Tom and his mother had been content to bleed me dry, I'd been quietly squirreling away funds, investing in a passion project that had become my own little secret. With my parents' support, I threw myself into making that dream a reality. Months passed in a whirlwind of hard work and renewed purpose. Before I knew it, the dilapidated flower shop I'd bought on a whim had been transformed into a thriving business, its rustic charm and premium blooms drawing rave reviews from customers across the city. My own little oasis far removed from the suffocating world of Lorraine's making. Which was why, when the local news crew showed up to do a feel-good segment on the shop's success, I didn't hesitate to seize the opportunity. "Behind every flower there's a story," I said earnestly into the camera, carefully manicured hands caressing a vibrant red rose. A tale of resilience, of blossoming against all odds. That's what this place represents to me. A chance to start anew, to cultivate something truly beautiful out of even the most barren of circumstances. The words rang with authenticity, each one carrying the weight of my own hard-won rebirth. And later, as the segment aired to thousands of viewers across the city, I couldn't help but savor the delicious twist of fate it represented. Because there, I knew Lorraine and Tom would be watching, their own circumstances drastically diminished in the wake of my departure. And as the camera panned over the bustling shop, showcasing my hard-earned success in high definition, they would be forced to confront the harsh truth they'd tried so desperately to deny. I was not the failure they'd sought to discard. I was a woman reborn, thriving precisely because I'd had the courage to shed the shackles they tried to bind me with. And with my newfound power and self-assurance, I had no intention of fading back into meek obscurity. No, this was just the opening salvo, the first taste of the reckoning that was to come. Lorraine and Tom wanted to cast me aside like garbage? Fine. They were about to learn just how hazardous their precious legacy could be when it fell into the wrong hands. The game was just beginning, and this time, I held all the cards. It was the annual neighborhood block party, and the air was thick with the scent of charred burgers and cheap beer. Normally, this was the kind of event I avoided like the plague, too much forced socializing, too many prying eyes. But this year was different. This year, I had a point to prove. As I made my way through the crowd, heads turned and whispers rippled in my wake. News of my very public split from Tom and his venomous mother had spread like wildfire, no doubt fueled by their own twisted version of events. But I didn't care. Let them talk. Soon enough, they would be singing a very different tune. "Well, well, if it isn't the woman of the hour," a familiar voice rang out, dripping with disdain. I turned to find Lorraine bearing down on me, Tom skulking a few paces behind like a beaten dog. Angela was mercifully absent, though I had no illusions about her eventual appearance. "Lorraine," I replied coolly, refusing to be baited. "Lovely to see you out and about. Keeping busy, I trust?" She sneered at my nonchalant tone. "Don't play coy with me, Dolores. We both know you've been putting on quite the performance lately with your newfound success." The way she spat out that last word spoke volumes. To Lorraine, my independence was a personal affront, a threat to the natural order she'd worked so hard to maintain. Tom shifted uncomfortably beside her, his gaze flitting anywhere but my face. I almost felt sorry for the pathetic bastard. "If you're referring to my blossoming business ventures, I don't see how that's any of your concern," I said evenly. "But since you brought it up, things are going swimmingly. I'd offer you a bouquet, but I have a strict policy against fraternizing with snakes." A few nearby partygoers failed to stifle their laughter, emboldening me. Lorraine's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You think you've won, don't you?" she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "That by prancing around with your little flower shop, putting on airs for the neighborhood, you've somehow bested me?" I shrugged unconcerned. "I don't think anything, Lorraine. I know I've won. Why else would you be standing here, so clearly threatened by my mere existence?" The barb hit its mark, and I could see the fury building behind her cold eyes. Good. Let her rage, let her spiral into the toxic pit of her own making. I was no longer afraid. "You arrogant little—" she began, but a warm hand on my arm stopped her in her tracks. It was Judith, bless her soul, flanked by a small cluster of the community ladies who'd borne witness to my humiliation all those months ago. "Is there a problem here, Dee?" she asked pointedly, her sharp gaze cutting into Lorraine. "Only we couldn't help but overhear this unpleasantness." Lorraine visibly bristled at the subtle rebuke, her mouth working furiously as she struggled to regain her composure. In that moment, it was clear. The tides had turned, and she was swiftly becoming the outcast in her own social circle. "No problem at all, Judith," I replied, squeezing her hand gratefully. "Lorraine was just reminiscing about old times. Weren't you, dear?" The sickly sweet endearment hung in the air like a challenge, and I could see Lorraine's hands curling into fists as she fought for control. This time, though, she remained silent, seemingly aware that any outburst would only further alienate her. "Well, isn't that nice?" Judith said, her tone making it abundantly clear that it was anything but. "Why don't you ladies run along, then? I'm sure Dee has much better things to do with her time." It was a blatant dismissal, and an utterly masterful one at that. As the cluster of women closed ranks around me, Lorraine could only gape impotently, her carefully cultivated facade of genteel superiority crumbling by the second. "This isn't over," she managed finally, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. "You mark my words, Dolores, you haven't seen the last of me." "I certainly hope not," I shot back, feeling emboldened by the support of my newfound allies. "Watching you unravel promises to be immensely satisfying." With that, I turned on my heel, leaving her to stew in her own bitter juices as I rejoined the party. The battle lines had been drawn, and for the first time, I held the higher ground. Lorraine's twisted legacy was already cracking at the seams, and I had no intention of letting up until it lay in ruins at my feet. "Mom! Oh no, this can't be!" Grace's voice cuts through the quiet evening, jolting me from my thoughts as I prepare dinner in the kitchen. My heart races as I rush to the living room, fearing the worst. "Grace, honey, what's wrong?" I ask, my voice trembling slightly. I find my 10-year-old daughter standing by the lamp, her face pale and her eyes wide with fear. "There's something weird in the lamp, Mom," she whispers, pointing at the base of the lamp with a shaky finger. I approach the lamp cautiously, my mind spinning with possibilities. As I examine the base, I notice a small, unfamiliar device attached to it. A chill runs down my spine as realization dawns on me. Is that a wiretap? I mutter under my breath, my heart sinking. Grace looks up at me, her eyes filled with confusion and fear. "What's a wiretap, Mom?" I take a deep breath, trying to compose myself for my daughter's sake. "It's something that people use to listen to other people's conversations without them knowing," I explain gently, pulling her into a reassuring hug. As I hold Grace close, my mind races with questions. Who would do this to us? Why would someone invade our privacy like this? A sense of violation and anger begins to build inside me, but I push it down, focusing on comforting my daughter. "Don't worry, sweetie," I say, stroking her hair. "We'll figure this out. I won't let anyone hurt our family." Grace nods, burying her face in my shoulder. "I'm scared, Mom," she whispers, her voice muffled. "I know, honey. But we'll get through this together. I promise." I hold her tightly, my determination growing with each passing moment. As I stand there, holding my daughter in the living room, I can't help but feel a sense of dread wash over me. The realization that someone has been listening to our private conversations, invading our most intimate moments, makes my skin crawl. I think back to the strained relationship I've had with my mother-in-law, Frances, over the years. The constant meddling, the subtle jabs at my parenting, the way she always seems to undermine my authority in my own home. Could she be behind this? The thought makes my stomach churn. I glance around the room, suddenly feeling exposed and vulnerable. How long has this been going on? What have they heard? The questions swirl in my mind, each one more unsettling than the last. But I know I can't let my fear consume me. I have to be strong for Grace, for our family. I take a deep breath, squaring my shoulders as I gently pull away from my daughter's embrace. "Okay, Grace, here's what we're going to do," I say, my voice steady and calm. "We're going to call the police and report this. They'll help us figure out who did this and keep us safe." Grace nods, her eyes still wide with fear but a glimmer of trust shining through. "Okay, Mom, I trust you." Those 3 simple words fill me with a renewed sense of purpose. I will protect my family, no matter what it takes. I won't let anyone tear us apart or destroy the love and trust we've built. As I reach for the phone to dial 911, I feel a wave of determination wash over me. This is just the beginning, I know. But I'm ready to face whatever comes our way, armed with the love and strength of my family by my side. As I wait for the police to arrive, my mind drifts back to the countless times Frances has meddled in our lives. Her obsession with Doris has always been a point of contention, but I never imagined it would lead to something like this. I remember the day we moved into this house, how excited we were to start our new life together. But Frances was there, her disapproving gaze sweeping over every inch of our home. "Doris, dear, are you sure this is the best you can do?" she had said, her voice dripping with condescension. Over the years, her interference only grew worse. She would drop by unannounced, criticizing my cooking, my parenting, even the way I decorated our home. I tried to maintain peace for Doris's sake, but it was a constant struggle. One particular incident stands out in my mind. It was Grace's 5th birthday, and we had invited some of her friends over for a small party. Frances had insisted on being there, despite my reservations. As the children played in the backyard, I overheard Frances talking to one of the other mothers. "Beth just doesn't have what it takes to be a proper mother," she said, her voice loud enough for me to hear. "Poor Doris, having to put up with her inadequacies." I felt my face flush with anger and embarrassment. How dare she speak about me like that, in my own home? I wanted to confront her, but I knew it would only make things worse. Instead, I focused on making sure Grace had a wonderful birthday. I pushed down my own hurt and frustration, determined not to let Frances ruin this special day for my daughter. But now, as I sit here waiting for the police, I realize that Frances's meddling has gone too far. The wiretaps, the invasion of our privacy. It's unforgivable. I hear a knock at the door and take a deep breath, steeling myself for what's to come. As I open the door, I'm relieved to see 2 officers standing there, their faces serious but kind. "Mrs. Thompson?" one of them asks, and I nod. "We received a call about a possible wiretapping situation." Can you tell us what happened? I invite them in and begin to explain, my voice shaking slightly as I recount the events of the evening. They listen intently, taking notes and asking questions. As I talk, I can't help but feel a sense of betrayal wash over me. How could Frances do this to us, to her own son and granddaughter? The thought makes my stomach churn. The officers assure me that they will investigate the matter thoroughly. They take the wiretap as evidence and promise to keep me updated on their progress. After they leave, I sit down heavily on the couch, my head in my hands. I feel like I'm in a nightmare, one that I can't seem to wake up from. Grace comes over and sits beside me, her small hand resting on my arm. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" she asks, her voice small and uncertain. I look at her, my brave, beautiful daughter, and I know that I have to be strong for her. "Yes, honey, we're going to be okay," I say, pulling her into a tight hug. "I promise." But even as I say the words, I know that things will never be the same. France's actions have set something in motion, something that I fear will tear our family apart. As I hold Grace close, I vow to myself that I will do whatever it takes to protect her, to keep her safe from the toxicity that threatens to engulf us. No matter what happens, I will always be there for her, my love for her unwavering and unbreakable. The days following the discovery of the wiretap are a blur of police interviews and hushed conversations with Doris. We try to shield Grace from the worst of it, but I can see the confusion and fear in her eyes. One evening, as we're sitting around the dinner table, Doris clears his throat and looks at me, his expression serious. "Beth, I think we need to talk about my mother." I feel my stomach clench at the mention of Frances. "What about her?" I ask, trying to keep my voice steady. "I think we need to limit our visits to her house for a while," he says, his eyes searching mine for a reaction. "At least until this whole wiretapping situation is resolved." I nod, relief washing over me. "I think that's a good idea," I say, reaching out to take his hand. "We need to focus on our own family right now." Grace looks up from her plate, her brow furrowed. "Does that mean we won't see Grandma anymore?" she asks, her voice small. I exchange a glance with Doris before turning to our daughter. "We'll still see Grandma, sweetie," I say, trying to reassure her. "Just not as often as before." Grace nods, but I can see the uncertainty in her eyes. My heart aches for her, for the innocence that's being stripped away by Frances's actions. The next day, I'm in the kitchen making lunch when the phone rings. I answer it, expecting it to be the police with an update on the investigation. Instead, I hear Frances's voice on the other end of the line. "Beth, dear, how are you?" she asks, her tone saccharine sweet. I feel my jaw clench at the sound of her voice. "What do you want, Frances?" I ask, not bothering to hide the anger in my voice. "I just wanted to check in on my favorite daughter-in-law," she says, her words dripping with false sincerity. "I heard about the little incident with the wiretap. Such a shame." I grip the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. "A shame?" I repeat, my voice rising. "Is that all you have to say about it?" Now, Beth, there's no need to get upset," Frances says, her tone condescending. "I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding." I feel my blood boil at her words. "A misunderstanding?" I say, my voice shaking with anger. "Someone invaded our privacy, Frances. They listened to our conversations, our private moments. And you think it's just a misunderstanding?" There's a pause on the other end of the line. "Beth, dear, you're overreacting," Frances says, her voice cold. "I'm sure whoever did this had their reasons." I can't believe what I'm hearing. "Their reasons?" I repeat, my voice rising to a shout. What possible reason could anyone have for doing something like this? "Perhaps they were concerned about your ability to be a good mother," Frances says, her words like a slap in the face. "Perhaps they wanted to make sure Grace was being properly cared for." I feel like I've been punched in the gut. How dare she question my ability to be a mother? How dare she use my daughter as a weapon against me? "I am a damn good mother, Frances," I say, my voice low and dangerous, "and I will not let you or anyone else tell me otherwise." I hang up the phone before she can respond, my hands shaking with rage. I lean against the counter, taking deep breaths to try and calm myself. Doris comes into the kitchen, his face etched with concern. "Beth, what's wrong?" he asks, coming over to wrap his arms around me. I bury my face in his chest, tears streaming down my cheeks. "Your mother," I say, my voice muffled. "She had the nerve to question my ability to be a good mother." I feel Doris stiffen against me. She what? He says, his voice low and angry. I pull back to look at him, my eyes red and puffy. She implied that whoever put the wiretap in our house did it because they were concerned about Grace's well-being, I say, my voice breaking. Doris's face hardens, his jaw clenching. That's it, he says, his voice firm. We need to distance ourselves from her, Beth, for our own sanity. I nod, relief and gratitude washing over me. Thank you, I whisper, burying my face in his chest once more. As we stand there, holding each other in the kitchen, I know that we've reached a turning point. We can no longer allow Frances to control our lives, to dictate our happiness. It's time to take a stand, to protect our family from her toxic influence. No matter what it takes, we will find a way to break free from her grasp and build a life of our own, one filled with love, trust, and respect. In the weeks following our decision to distance ourselves from Frances, I find myself constantly on edge, jumping at every unexpected sound or movement. The police investigation into the wiretapping is ongoing, but they haven't made any significant breakthroughs yet. One afternoon, as I'm cleaning the house, I decide to rearrange the furniture in the bedroom. As I'm moving the bed, I notice something strange behind the headboard. My heart races as I reach out and pull out another wiretap, similar to the one we found in the living room. I feel my stomach drop as I realize the extent of the invasion. How many more of these devices are hidden throughout our home? Who has been listening to our most intimate conversations? With shaking hands, I call Doris at work. Doris, I found another one, I say, my voice trembling. In our bedroom. There's a pause on the other end of the line. I'll be right there, he says, his voice tight with anger. When Doris arrives home, we search the house from top to bottom, finding wiretaps in almost every room. The kitchen, the bathroom, even Grace's bedroom. I feel sick to my stomach as I imagine someone listening to my daughter's private moments. We call the police, who arrive quickly and begin a thorough investigation. They dust for fingerprints and take the wiretaps as evidence, promising to do everything they can to find the person responsible. As the officers leave, I turn to Doris, my eyes filled with tears. I can't stay here, I say, my voice breaking. I don't feel safe. Doris nods, his face etched with concern. I understand, he says, pulling me into a tight hug. We'll figure something out. We decide to send Grace to stay with my parents in a nearby town while we deal with the investigation. It breaks my heart to be separated from her, but I know it's for the best. I need to keep her safe, no matter what. As I pack Grace's bags, I can't shake the feeling that someone is watching me. I glance out the window, half expecting to see Frances's face peering back at me. But there's no one there, just the quiet street and the setting sun. I drive Grace to my parents' house, my heart heavy with worry and fear. When we arrive, my mother takes one look at my face and pulls me into a tight hug. "Oh, Beth," she says, her voice filled with concern. "What's happened?" I break down then, sobbing into her shoulder as I tell her everything. The wiretaps, the police investigation, the constant fear that someone is watching our every move. My mother listens patiently, her face growing more and more concerned with each passing moment. When I finish, she takes my hand in hers and looks me in the eye. "Beth, you're doing the right thing," she says, her voice firm. "You need to protect yourself and Grace, and we'll be here for you, no matter what." I nod, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. Knowing that I have my parents' support means everything to me. As I drive back home, my mind races with possibilities. Who could be behind the wiretapping? Is it Frances, trying to gather evidence to use against me? Or is it someone else entirely, someone with a grudge against our family? I think back to the confrontation with Frances, the way she questioned my ability to be a good mother. Could she really be capable of something like this? The thought makes my blood run cold. When I arrive home, Doris is waiting for me in the living room. He looks up as I enter, his face drawn and tired. "Beth, we need to talk," he says, his voice serious. "I think I know who's behind the wiretapping." I feel my heart skip a beat as I sit down beside him. "Who?" I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Doris takes a deep breath, his eyes meeting mine. "It's my mother," he says, his voice heavy with emotion. "I think she's been spying on us, trying to find a way to tear our family apart." I feel like I've been punched in the gut. Frances, the woman who has made my life a living hell for years, is behind this invasion of our privacy. The betrayal cuts deep, leaving me reeling with shock and anger. As I sit there, trying to process this new information, I feel a sense of determination wash over me. I won't let Frances win. I won't let her destroy our family. No matter what it takes, I will protect Grace and Doris from her toxic influence. Even if it means cutting her out of our lives completely, I will do whatever it takes to keep my family safe and whole. The revelation of Frances's involvement in the wiretapping leaves me reeling. I can't believe that my own mother-in-law would go to such lengths to undermine our family. The betrayal cuts deep, leaving me feeling lost and alone. I decide to confide in my father, Paul, hoping that his wisdom and support will help me navigate this difficult situation. When I arrive at his house, he takes one look at my face and pulls me into a tight hug. "What's wrong, Beth?" he asks, his voice filled with concern. I break down then, telling him everything. The wiretaps, the police investigation, and Doris's suspicion that Frances is behind it all. My father listens intently, his face growing more and more serious with each passing moment. When I finish, he takes a deep breath and looks me in the eye. "Beth, I know this is hard, but you need to stay strong," he says, his voice firm. "You have to protect yourself and Grace, no matter what." I nod, feeling a sense of determination wash over me. "I know, Dad, but I don't know what to do. I feel like I can't trust anyone anymore." My father takes my hand in his eyes filled with compassion. "You can trust me, Beth. I'll always be here for you, no matter what." We decide to return to my house together, hoping to find some clues that might help us uncover the truth. When we arrive, the house is quiet and still, with no sign of Doris or Grace. As we make our way through the rooms, I can't shake the feeling that something is off. The air feels heavy with tension, and I find myself jumping at every unexpected sound. Suddenly, I hear a noise coming from the bedroom. My heart races as I push open the door, my father close behind me. There, crouched by the bed, is Doris. He looks up at us, his face pale and his eyes wide with fear. "Doris, what are you doing?" I ask, my voice shaking. He stands up slowly, his hands trembling. "Beth, I can explain," he says, his voice barely above a whisper. I look down at his hands and see that he's holding one of the wiretaps. My stomach drops as I realize what's happening. "Doris, you set this up with your mother?" I ask, my voice rising with anger. He shakes his head frantically. "No, Beth, I swear. I found it here, just now. I was going to remove it." I feel my father's hand on my shoulder, steadying me. "Doris, I think you need to tell us the truth," he says, his voice calm but firm. Doris takes a deep breath, his eyes filling with tears. "It was my mother," he says, his voice breaking. "She convinced me that Beth was cheating on me, that she was an unfit mother. She said she had proof." I feel like I've been punched in the gut. "And you believed her?" I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Doris nods, his face etched with shame. "I'm so sorry, Beth. I never should have doubted you. I let my mother's lies cloud my judgment." I turn away from him, my heart breaking into a million pieces. The betrayal is too much to bear, the pain too deep to ignore. My father steps forward, his face hard with anger. "Doris, I think you need to leave," he says, his voice leaving no room for argument. Doris nods, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I understand," he says, his voice heavy with regret. "I'll go." As he walks out of the room, I feel a sense of numbness wash over me. I can't believe that the man I loved, the father of my child, could betray me like this. My father pulls me into a tight hug, his voice soft and comforting. "Beth, I know this hurts, but you're not alone. We'll get through this together." I nod, feeling a sense of strength wash over me. I know that the road ahead will be difficult, but with my father by my side, I know I can face anything. As we stand there, holding each other in the quiet of the bedroom, I feel a sense of determination wash over me. I won't let Frances win. I won't let her destroy my family. No matter what it takes, I will protect Grace from her toxic influence. Even if it means leaving Doris behind, I will do whatever it takes to keep my daughter safe and happy. The days following Doris's confession are a blur of anger, heartbreak, and disbelief. I can't fathom how he could have believed his mother's lies, how he could have doubted my love and loyalty. I find myself constantly replaying our confrontation in my mind, the look of guilt and shame on his face as he admitted to his betrayal. The pain is almost too much to bear, but I know I have to stay strong for Grace. One evening, as I'm putting Grace to bed, Doris comes into the room, his eyes red and puffy from crying. "Beth, can we talk?" he asks, his voice barely above a whisper. I nod, tucking Grace in and kissing her forehead before following Doris out of the room. We sit down on the couch, the tension between us palpable. "Beth, I'm so sorry," Doris begins, his voice breaking. "I never should have believed my mother's lies. I never should have doubted you." I feel my anger rising, my voice shaking as I respond. "How could you, Doris? How could you think I would ever be unfaithful to you? How could you let your mother manipulate you like that?" Doris hangs his head, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I don't know, Beth. I was weak. I let her get inside my head, and I didn't trust my own instincts." I shake my head, tears streaming down my face. "Do you have any idea how much this hurts, Doris? How betrayed I feel?" He nods, his own tears falling. "I know, Beth. I know I've hurt you deeply, and I'll never forgive myself for that." We sit in silence for a moment, the weight of his betrayal hanging heavy in the air. Finally, I take a deep breath and look him in the eye. "I need to know everything, Doris. What exactly did your mother tell you? What made you believe her?" Doris takes a shaky breath, his voice barely audible. "She told me that the neighbors had seen you with another man, that they had proof of your infidelity. She said that you were an unfit mother, that you were neglecting Grace." I feel my heart shatter into a million pieces. "And you believed her? Without even talking to me first?" Doris nods, his face etched with shame. "I'm so sorry, Beth. I was a fool. I let my mother's words poison my mind, and I didn't trust in our love." I stand up, my body shaking with anger and hurt. "I can't do this anymore, Doris. I can't live with someone who doesn't trust me, who lets his mother control our lives." Doris stands up, his eyes wide with panic. "Beth, please, I'll do anything to make this right. I'll cut my mother out of our lives completely. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back." I shake my head, my voice firm. "It's too late, Doris. The damage has been done. I need to protect myself and Grace from this toxic environment." I walk towards the door, my heart breaking with every step. "I'm taking Grace, and we're going to stay with my parents for a while. I need time to think, to figure out what's best for us." Doris falls to his knees, his voice desperate. "Beth, please don't go. I love you. I can't live without you and Grace." I turn to face him, my eyes hard. "You should have thought of that before you let your mother destroy our family." With that, I walk out the door, my heart shattered, but my resolve strong. I know that the road ahead will be difficult, but I also know that I'm doing what's best for myself and my daughter. As I drive to my parents' house, Grace sleeping peacefully in the back seat, I feel a sense of clarity wash over me. I know that I deserve better than a husband who doesn't trust me, who lets his mother control our lives. I vow to myself that I will build a new life for Grace and me, one filled with love, trust, and respect. No matter what it takes, I will protect my daughter from the toxicity that threatens to engulf us. And as for Frances, I know that she will face the consequences of her actions. I will make sure that the truth comes out, that everyone knows the extent of her manipulation and deceit. But for now, I focus on the road ahead, on the promise of a brighter future for Grace and me. I know that we will emerge from this stronger, more resilient than ever before. Settling into life at my parents' house is a challenge, but their unwavering support and love make it easier to bear. Grace seems to be adjusting well, finding comfort in the familiar surroundings and the doting attention of her grandparents. As the days pass, I find myself growing stronger, more determined to uncover the truth behind France's manipulation. With my father's encouragement, I decide to confront the neighbors who were allegedly spreading rumors about my infidelity. Armed with a newfound sense of purpose, I make my way to the first neighbor's house, my father by my side. When Mrs. Johnson opens the door, her face falls as she sees me standing there. "Beth, I'm so sorry," she begins, her voice trembling. "I never meant to cause you any harm." I take a deep breath, trying to keep my anger in check. "Mrs. Johnson, I need to know the truth. Did Frances tell you that I was cheating on Doris?" She nods, her eyes filling with tears. "She did. She said that she had proof that she had seen you with another man." I feel my heart sink, the weight of Frances's lies crushing me. "And you believed her? Without even asking me first?" Mrs. Johnson hangs her head in shame. "I'm so sorry, Beth. I should have known better. Francis can be so convincing, and I let myself get caught up in the gossip. I nod, my anger slowly giving way to a sense of betrayal. Do you have any idea how much damage your words have caused, how much pain you've inflicted on my family? She shakes her head, tears streaming down her face. I'm truly sorry, Beth. I never meant to hurt you. I'll do whatever I can to make this right. My father places a comforting hand on my shoulder, his voice calm and steady. Thank you for your honesty, Mrs. Johnson. We appreciate your willingness to set the record straight. We leave her house, my heart heavy with the knowledge of just how deep France's manipulation runs. As we make our way to the other neighbors' homes, the story remains the same. Each one admits to being taken in by Frances's lies, to spreading false rumors without any proof. By the end of the day, I'm exhausted, my mind reeling from the extent of Frances's deceit. But I also feel a sense of vindication, knowing that the truth is finally coming to light. When we return to my parents' house, I find Grace waiting for me, her face etched with concern. Mom, are you okay? She asks, wrapping her arms around me. I hug her tightly, my voice thick with emotion. I will be, sweetie, I promise. That evening, as I tuck Grace into bed, I hear a knock at the front door. My father answers it, and I hear the sound of raised voices coming from the living room. I make my way downstairs, my heart racing as I see Frances standing there, her face twisted with anger. How dare you turn the neighbors against me? She spits, her eyes blazing with fury. I feel a surge of strength coursing through me, my voice steady and calm. I didn't turn anyone against you, Frances. You did that yourself, with your lies and manipulation. She scoffs, her voice dripping with disdain. You've always been jealous of my relationship with Doris. You've been trying to turn him against me for years. I shake my head, my voice rising with each word. No, Frances. You're the one who's been trying to turn Doris against me. You're the one who's been poisoning our marriage with your lies and deceit. My father steps forward, his voice firm and unyielding. I think it's time for you to leave, Frances. You've caused enough damage to this family. Frances's face falls, the reality of her actions finally sinking in. She turns to leave, her shoulders slumped in defeat. As the door closes behind her, I feel a sense of relief wash over me. I know that the road ahead will be difficult, that the wounds inflicted by Frances's betrayal will take time to heal. But I also know that I'm not alone. With the love and support of my family, I will find the strength to rebuild my life, to create a future filled with trust, respect, and happiness. And as for Frances, I know that she will face the consequences of her actions. The truth has a way of coming to light, and she will have to live with the knowledge of the pain she's caused. But for now, I focus on the present, on the love and laughter that fills my parents' home. I know that together, Grace and I will emerge from this stronger, more resilient than ever before. In the weeks following my confrontation with Frances, I throw myself into building a new life for Grace and myself. With the support of my parents, I find a full-time job at a local bookstore, relishing the opportunity to immerse myself in a world of stories and imagination. Grace continues her swimming lessons, finding solace and joy in the water. I watch her glide through the pool, her face lit up with a smile, and I feel a sense of pride and love wash over me. One afternoon, as I'm sorting through a new shipment of books, my phone buzzes with an incoming call. I glance at the screen, my heart skipping a beat as I see Doris's name. I hesitate for a moment, unsure if I'm ready to face him, but I know that I can't avoid this conversation forever. I step outside, taking a deep breath before answering the call. Hello, Doris. There's a pause on the other end of the line, followed by a shaky breath. Beth, I'm so sorry. I know I've said it before, but I need you to know how much I regret what I did. I close my eyes, feeling the weight of his words settle over me. I know, Doris, but the damage has been done. I can't just forget what happened. I understand, he says, his voice heavy with emotion. I just wanted to let you know that I've started seeing a therapist. I'm trying to work through my issues to understand why I let my mother's manipulation get to me. I feel a flicker of hope in my chest, but I push it down, knowing that I can't let myself get caught up in false promises. That's good, Doris. I'm glad you're getting help. We talk for a few more minutes, our conversation stilted and awkward. When we hang up, I feel a sense of sadness wash over me, knowing that the man I once loved is now a stranger to me. As the days turn into weeks, I find myself settling into a new routine. Grace and I spend our evenings curled up on the couch, reading books and watching movies. On weekends, we explore the city, discovering new parks and museums. I hear whispers around town about Frances, about how she's become a pariah in the community. People cross the street to avoid her, their faces etched with disgust and anger. Part of me feels a sense of satisfaction, knowing that she's finally facing the consequences of her actions. But another part of me feels a twinge of pity, knowing that she's now living a life of isolation and loneliness. One evening, as I'm tucking Grace into bed, she looks up at me with wide, curious eyes. "Mom, do you think Grandma Frances is sorry for what she did?" I pause, considering my words carefully. "I don't know, sweetie. Sometimes people do bad things because they're hurting inside, and they don't know how to deal with their pain." Grace nods, her brow furrowed in thought. "I hope she learns to be a better person." I smile, feeling a surge of love and pride for my wise, compassionate daughter. Me too, Grace. Me too. As I lay in bed that night, I find myself reflecting on the journey that brought me to this moment. The pain and betrayal, the fear and uncertainty, the strength and resilience that I never knew I possessed. I know that the road ahead will be difficult, that there will be challenges and obstacles to overcome. But I also know that I'm not alone, that I have the love and support of my family to guide me through. And as I drift off to sleep, I feel a sense of peace wash over me, knowing that no matter what the future holds, I have the strength and courage to face it head on. Because I am Beth Thompson, a survivor, a fighter, a woman who refuses to be defined by the actions of others. And I know that with the love of my daughter and the support of my family, I can overcome anything that life throws my way.